Chapter 757. They watched in shock as the strange man scraped all the flesh off the bones and sucked all the marrow out of the bones. This strange man had changed a lot compared to when Xiaofan brought him here. The most obvious change was that he no longer looked like dried meat. He now had the flesh of a normal person, but he still didn't look strong. He didn't have any obvious bulging muscles, but after seeing how he broke a fearsome beast's leg bone, Xiaofan and the others didn't dare underestimate him. His skin no longer looked greenish-black. It was still pale and bloodless, but it was different from EC's half-beast slave. At least that was what the half-beast slave looked like. But this strange man gave off a strange feeling. He looked like he was seriously ill, but also very dangerous. After eating, the strange man's skin softened a lot. Other than some dried cracks and the strange greenish-white color, he looked like a normal person. At least he didn't look like a corpse anymore. His movements were no longer stiff. If he could breathe and have a heartbeat, he would look more like a living person. After eating, the strange man looked at Xiaofan with gratitude. He wasn't as wary of Zheng Luo and the Yanjiao warrior anymore. "Where is this place?" It was probably because his body had begun to recover after eating that his voice no longer sounded like he was grinding a stone with sandpaper. However, his speech was still not smooth, and his tone sounded very strange, but at least one could roughly guess what he was saying. "This is the Yanjiao tribe," Xiaofan said. "Yanjiao tribe?" The strange man's face was full of confusion. He seemed to remember something, but couldn't. "Who are you? Which tribe are you from?" Xiaofan asked. In order to make sure the strange man heard clearly, Xiaofan said each word slowly. "Who am I?" The strange man looked even more confused. He didn't know what to say. He tilted his head and thought hard. "Then do you remember your tribe's totem? Can you draw a totem?" Xiaofan asked. "Totem. Totem." The strange man repeated the word in a low voice. The more he said it, the more fluent he became. He suddenly raised his head, and his crimson eyes flashed. "Totem. Yes, totem, do you remember?" Xiaofan walked into the secret room and took out some paint from a wooden cabinet. He mixed it with water, dipped his finger in it, and then drew a line on a piece of cloth. A black mark immediately appeared on the grayish-yellow linen cloth. Xiaofan originally wanted to use a pen, but after seeing the strange man's condition, he decided that it would be more convenient. The strange man looked at Xiaofan's actions, as if he was familiar with Xiaofan's actions. He poked the small stone box with his right thumb. Many tribesmen like to paint with their thumbs. It was an ancient habit, and the strange man was no exception. Because he didn't control his strength, he almost knocked over the small stone box. Luckily, Xiaofan held on to it. Looking at the black lump on his finger, the strange man walked to the stone table and drew a line on the linen cloth Xiaofan had spread out. He felt that it was too troublesome, so he pushed the linen cloth aside and drew directly on the stone table. In the beginning, he paused every time his finger moved, as if he was recalling something. Towards the end, his drawing became smoother and smoother, and in the end, he didn't stop at all. It wasn't a complicated picture. If it was Xiaofan, he could finish it in 2 seconds. However, this weirdo took nearly 10 minutes. Most of his time was spent thinking, so he wasn't fast when he drew. But at least he finished it. Zheng Luo couldn't help but walk over curiously. He craned his neck to look at the stone table. He couldn't get too close as the strange man was still guarded against him. "This is?" Zheng Luo looked at the words on the stone table and asked. The strange man looked at Zheng Luo cautiously and made a sound. But the tone was a little strange. Xiaofan couldn't understand what he meant. The pattern on the stone table looked like a person with his arms raised, looking up. Above the person pattern was a circle. Usually, when a pattern like this appeared in a pattern, it was most likely referring to the sun. This was the strange man's tribal totem. Even if tribesmen couldn't remember their names, they wouldn't forget their tribe's totem, especially those tribes that still maintained their primitive fire seed. This strange man didn't seem to remember anything else, but he really drew this. After he finished, he stared at the totem on the stone table in a daze. Xiaofan was sure that he had never seen a totem like this before, so he couldn't figure out who this person was. He looked at Zheng Luo behind him, who was also confused. He had never seen a totem like this before, but if it was drawn by someone who even forgot his own name but still remembered the totem, the chances of it being fake were very low. But tribes had always existed. Some tribes might have gone extinct in the past, and this strange man was one of them. Your tribe used to be in the desert? Xiaofan asked again. Desert? The strange man was even more unfamiliar with this word. He didn't understand what Xiaofan was talking about. Realizing this, Xiaofan explained the desert environment. It rarely rains, there aren't many trees, and it's all yellow sand. After he understood, the strange man nodded. It's there, it's there. The strange man knew that Xiaofan wasn't from the same tribe as him, but because Xiaofan's aura was similar to his own, he initially thought that Xiaofan was from the same tribe as him. After eating a beast leg, his body was recovering and his senses were much stronger. Only then did he realize that Xiaofan was different from himself. But he still didn't guard against Xiaofan. Even if they weren't from the same tribe, it definitely had something to do with his awakening. So the strange man asked anxiously, "My tribe, go back." Xiaofan only understood a few of the strange man's words. You want to go back? The strange man nodded. But there are no more tribes in the desert, Xiaofan said. The strange man was stunned. He shook his head and denied, "No, impossible, impossible." But then he thought of something, as if he couldn't remember clearly. His face twisted, and he suddenly hugged his head and squatted down. He looked like he was in great pain. His greenish-white skin bulged like veins, and he roared like a wild beast in the forest. It sounded like a strong wind blowing into a cave and then out again. It was very strange. The stone chips and dust on the surrounding walls were shaken up, and the jar of water in the corner cracked with a bang. There wasn't much water in the jar, so it was mostly broken pieces that clanked against the wall. The sound echoed in the corridor outside. Duo Kong and the others who were blocking the staircase felt their hair stand on end. The soundproofing in the Flaming River Castle was quite good, but at this moment, the sound could be heard everywhere in the castle. The people who were close to the Flaming River Castle heard the sound very muffled, but they couldn't help but shiver. It was as if a cold wind swept past their backs. Where EC was, the half-beast slave Grasshopper's spine sprouted spikes. He looked nervously in the direction of the Flaming River Castle. EC also felt strange. What's going on over there? Inside the Flaming River Castle, the people who heard the sound rushed over and saw Duo Kong and his men blocking the entrance. Boss, is this sound made by a human? Someone asked Duo Kong. How would I know? Duo Kong was worried. What was going on down there? This was really making him anxious. In the secret room below. Seeing the strange man become agitated, Xiaofan and Zheng Luo's hearts tightened. Their hands gripped the hilts of their swords. If this strange man suddenly went berserk, they would have no choice but to kill him here. Although he really wanted to get some information from this person, he had to prioritize the safety of his own people over everything else. However, the strange man only hugged his head and squatted on the ground. He looked like he was in great pain, and after a while, his voice gradually weakened until it stopped. Xiaofan waited for a while, but he didn't move. Hey, what's going on with you? Xiaofan asked. Without waiting for an answer, Xiaofan asked again. Still, there was no response. He could feel that this man's violent aura had calmed down. If they didn't see him squatting there, no one would think there was anyone here. After all, there was no breathing or heartbeat. Other than the obvious signs of breathing before the roar, this man didn't seem to need air at all. If they locked him up in a sealed place, he might be able to survive. Xiaofan walked over. With one hand holding his sword, he reached out with the other and pushed the squatting man. The squatting man immediately fell backwards. When he fell, he was still squatting with his hands on his head. His hands and legs seemed to be frozen. They didn't move at all. Zheng Luo wanted to ask if this man was dead, but he remembered that this man was different from the rest. He asked, "What's wrong with him?" Xiaofan shook his head. From the energy waves around this man and in his body, it was very similar to other people when they were asleep. He's probably asleep? Xiaofan guessed. Asleep? Zheng Luo looked at the strange man who was squatting with his hands on his head. He looked like he wanted to curl himself into an egg. He thought to himself, he's really different. He even sleeps like this. Xiaofan looked at the pattern the strange man had drawn on the stone table. He gave Zheng Luo a look and the two walked out of the secret room with light steps. He looks like a normal person when they're asleep. He probably won't wake up anytime soon. You and Duo Kong stay here. I'm going to the Rain Tribe, Xiaofan said in a low voice. The Rain Tribe? You want to ask about this man? Zheng Luo knew that the Rain Tribe used to live at the edge of the desert. He understood Xiaofan's plan now. Yes, I want to know where this man came from. The people of Rock Hill City must have a purpose for keeping him here. This man said his tribe was in the desert. But we all know that ever since the slave masters came to the desert, there have been no more tribes in the desert. The Rain Tribe is so close to the desert and has been around for a long time. Maybe they know something that others don't. Zheng Luo nodded. Okay, come back quickly. If this man wakes up, he won't go easy on us. If there's no other choice, we'll have to kill him. Okay. Xiaofan knew that this man treated him differently from the others. It was because Xiaofan used another kind of energy to revive this man. In other words, this man wasn't really dead. He was just in a different state. It was Xiaofan's energy that woke him up. Without saying anything else, Xiaofan immediately left the Flaming River Castle and went to the Rain Tribe. When Xiaofan arrived, Yang Sui was smiling as he looked at a piece of linen cloth in his hand. On it was written the plants they planted this year, their handicrafts, and the trading situation in the Flaming River Castle. Now that they had a firm foothold here, they didn't need to worry about starvation anymore. The Flaming River trading point gave them more options for survival. Textiles, pottery, knitted goods, and so on could be traded. Even if the harvest wasn't good, they wouldn't starve. When the Yanjiao needed labor, their tribe would rush to do it. After all, they could trade labor for food from the Yanjiao. As he was reading, someone came to report that the Yanjiao's Grand Elder, Xiaofan, was here. Yang Sui immediately put down the things in his hand and asked someone to invite Xiaofan in. They didn't dare to put on airs. They had to rely on the Yanjiao tribe to survive here. Otherwise, with their tribe's fighting strength, they wouldn't be able to fend off so many people and beasts. Grand Elder, what brings you to our Rain Tribe today? Yang Sui asked with a smile. Xiaofan didn't beat around the bush. He handed over a piece of animal skin and asked, "Do you recognize this?" Xiaofan had drawn the pattern on the animal skin. "What is this?" Yang Sui took the animal skin and opened it. The smile on his face froze and his expression changed. His gaze was as sharp as a knife as he stared at Xiaofan. He asked in a low voice, "Where did you know this? You've seen it before?" Xiaofan briefly told him about the strange man. Xiaofan didn't explain how he brought the man back to life. He only said that the man who looked like an ancient corpse was brought back to life. Yang Sui's fingers tightened around the animal skin. His hands were trembling and his face was pale. Did they come back? They actually came back. Yang Sui muttered. His eyes were filled with fear and uneasiness. It was as if he had fallen into an ice cave. Even his blood was frozen. Who the hell are they? Seeing Yang Sui's soulless expression, Xiao Xian continued, he can't remember anything for the time being. He only remembers this pattern. Moreover, they should be controlled by the people of Rock Hill City and kept as puppets. Xiao Xian's words made Yang Sui breathe a sigh of relief, but his fingers were still trembling and his face was pale. The Han tribe, it's the Han tribe. The Han tribe? Xiao Xian had never heard of this tribe. The Han tribe used to live in the desert? Xiao Xian asked. Yang Sui's mouth twitched as if he was about to laugh. No, they didn't live in the desert. They lived in the desert wherever the Han tribe was. Xiao Xian was stunned by his words. You mean, the existence of the desert is because of the Han tribe? You can say that. Yang Sui took a deep breath and tried to suppress his emotions. That strange man should be very strong. His tribe must not have been weak in the past. But how could such a tribe disappear in the desert? Xiao Xian was puzzled. If they weren't strong, they wouldn't have been targeted by Rock Hill City. Yang Sui smiled bitterly. You only know that the Han tribe is strong, but you don't know that the Rain tribe used to be a big tribe too. Just in case, Yang Sui went out and drove the people around the house away. After he entered the house, he drank a bowl of water to calm himself down. He continued, there are some things that I found out from my ancestors' notes after I became a shaman. My ancestor had some written notes that the Rain tribe's chief and shaman knew, but there were some secret notes that only the Rain tribe's shaman could open. Not every shaman could open them. Without the strength to open them, you wouldn't be able to see them. And from those notes, I solved the puzzle that had been puzzling me for a long time. Xiao Xian once told Yang Sui that the primitive fire seed would weaken. Although it wasn't obvious, they could see the difference if they compared it with the fire seed from thousands of years ago. However, few people could live that long. They were different from the beasts that could grow indefinitely. People with different strength had a limit to their lifespan. Most senior totem warriors could live up to 200 or 300 years. Yang Sui could accept that the Rain tribe's fire seed was weakening, so they couldn't pray for rain. But he didn't understand why the Rain tribe's fire seed was weakening so quickly. The Rain tribe wasn't the only tribe with a long history. Yanjiao was also an ancient tribe, but they weren't as weak as the Rain tribe. In the end, it was all because of the fire seed. If the fire seed was strong, the tribe would be strong. If the fire seed was weak, the tribe would be weak. The Rain tribe had been living on the edge of the desert for so long that they had already broken away from the middle-sized tribes. Perhaps in the eyes of many people, they would soon disappear from this world. The fire seed. Yang Sui raised his head and sighed. Because of the Han tribe, the Rain tribe's fire seed is weaker than others. Have you fought with the Han tribe before? Xiao Xian asked. A long, long time ago, we fought with them. In the end, we lost. Yang Sui told Xiao Xian what he had recorded in his ancestors' secret notes. The desert wasn't like this in the past. It wasn't much different from other places on the mainland. Although it didn't rain often and some places were even dry all year round, it wasn't as big as the desert today. The Han tribe lived in a place that was dry all year round, while the Rain tribe lived in another place with fertile soil. It was very suitable for growing a plant that was discovered by the ancestors of the Rain tribe. After crushing the fruit of the plant and baking it with water, you would get a hard biscuit. The biscuit was easy to store and was also good at suppressing hunger. At that time, the Rain tribe valued that piece of land very much and even wanted to expand it. In order to make the crops grow better, the Rain tribe prayed for rain more often. Naturally, the range of rainfall extended towards the expansion of the farmland. However, the Han tribesmen didn't like rain. They didn't even like water. They could survive in dry environments for a long time because they liked drought. Just like the cacti in the desert, they themselves were reservoirs. As long as their reservoirs were filled with water, they could live well even if they didn't drink a single drop of water for 100 days. The Han tribe also wanted to expand their territory and have more dry land. As a result, even if the two tribes didn't live close to each other, they still had conflicts because of the expansion of their territories. Later on, the conflict intensified and the two tribes went to war. Tribesmen could fight to the death for territory, so the two tribes had completely different preferences and wanted to drive each other away or destroy each other directly. The conflict lasted for a long time. Yang Sui didn't know how long it lasted. There was no record of this in his ancestors' notes. It only mentioned that in the end, the shamans of the two tribes fought each other and both used the power of their fire seed. According to the ancient records left by the Rain tribe's ancestors, during the war between the two shamans, the wind and rain changed with just a wave of their hands. In the end, the Rain tribe was defeated. At that time, the shaman of the Rain tribe took the fire seed and the remaining tribesmen and left the place where they lived. They settled in another place, which was the edge of the desert. Because of that war, the Rain tribe's fire seed was severely depleted. It was an almost irreversible loss. At that time, the shaman of the Rain tribe blamed himself and burned himself in the fire pit. Since then, as time passed, the Rain tribe's fire seed continued to weaken, just like the other tribes' fire seeds. However, because of the war, their fire seed weakened faster than other tribes' fire seeds. When Yang Sui first learned the truth, his heart was filled with bitterness. However, at that time, he didn't know that the Han tribe still existed in the world. Although the desert had expanded to the Rain tribe's territory, the Han tribe seemed to have disappeared from the world. Perhaps because of some natural disasters or other reasons, the Han tribe no longer appeared. When the slave masters from the other side of the sea occupied the desert, the Han tribe became completely unknown. Yang Sui's people felt that in the end, the Rain tribe survived. It was a victory for them to be alive. As for the cruel history and defeat of the Rain tribe, the ancestors of the Rain tribe didn't want anyone to know about it. Yang Sui also kept it a secret. In the entire Rain tribe, except for him, no one else knew about this history. Listening to Yang Sui's story, Xiaofan felt that it was unbelievable. So the desert was created by the war between these two tribes. Out of the two veteran powerhouses with a long history, one was defeated and had to retreat to a faraway place. The fire company had lost too much of its resources in that war, so much so that it was much weaker than the other tribes of the same period. They couldn't even pray for rain. The other one disappeared for unknown reasons. Xiaofan remembered that the strange man looked like an ancient corpse. He should have been in that state for a long time, but he didn't know if their disappearance had anything to do with the slave masters. However, Yang Sui didn't know. If Xiaofan wanted to know the reason, he could only ask the strange man. Of course, the strange man had to remember. Chapter 758. When Xiaofan returned to Yanjiao, he relayed the information he got from Yang Sui to the leaders of the tribe. Yang Sui's request was not to air their dirty linen in public. Even the Rain ancestors did not plan to let the Rain tribesmen know. Xiaofan could not let too many Yanjiao know either. That was why he only told the leaders. Regarding the monster, everyone agreed to wait and see if they should kill him. They wanted to learn more about the unknown from him, especially the two retired shamans. When the pterosaur was resurrected, they wanted to use this strange bird-like creature to deduce what happened to the fire seed a long, long time ago. Unfortunately, the pterosaur could not speak. Even if it was smarter than some beasts, it could not compare to humans. It could not compare to Caesar and Cha-Cha, who grew up in human tribes. The two retired shamans were destined to not get the information they wanted. However, this time was different. No one knew how long the Han tribe had existed. There were no records of this tribe in the Flaming Horn ancestors' handwritten notes. Perhaps it was too long ago. Even if there were records of this tribe, they would have been lost over time. For example, during the cataclysm 1,000 years ago, although some history was recovered, it wasn't absolutely complete. It would be great if he could learn more about that era from that monster. After all, memories could be recovered and humans could speak. This was different from the pterosaur. Of course, this was all based on the assumption that the monster was no threat to Yanjiao. Otherwise, they would have to kill him. The monster fell asleep in a squatting position with his hands on his head. He did not wake up. Xiao Xian could not stay here forever. The 6 Gongjia family members were still waiting for him. Zheng Luo did not want to delay his metal work either. Duo Kong had led a hunting team not long ago, so they did not need to go out for a while. Hence, Zheng Luo and Duo Kong took turns to guard the secret room. They had to guard it personally. They would not be at ease if it were anyone else. After 5 days, the strange man in the secret chamber finally opened his eyes. Zheng Luo felt strange watching over such a silent person. This was the first time he knew such a person existed. When Zheng Luo heard the commotion, he stood at the entrance of the secret chamber and peeked in carefully. There was a long wooden box on the floor. It was newly made. Next to it was the coffin-like wooden box used to store the monster in the desert. Because it was damaged, Xiao Xian made a new one and placed the sleeping monster in it. Zheng Luo didn't know why Xiao Xian would have such thoughts. Actually, Xiao Xian had only looked at the strange man and suddenly thought of zombies. When Zheng Luo looked inside, the curled-up person in the wooden box had already straightened his hands and feet. He was no longer in a stiff posture. However, when he moved, there were still some creaking sounds, as if his bones and muscles were being pulled. However, this time, the strange man was unexpectedly quiet. He should have known there was someone outside, but he did not care. After he sat up, he was silent. No one knew what he was thinking. When Xiao Xian received the news and came over, the strange man was still sitting up straight like he had just woken up. "How is it?" Xiao Xian asked Zheng Luo. "It's been like that for a long time. Not moving at all. Normal people would make some movements, including blinking. However, when the person inside didn't move, he really didn't move. His eyelids didn't even move. It was as if his entire body was frozen. His chest didn't rise and fall, and he couldn't hear his heartbeat. Even his pulse couldn't be seen." Xiao Xian was puzzled. Why was this person so quiet? Zheng Luo saw that Xiao Xian was still holding a fine-necked ceramic bottle. He sniffed it. It smelled of blood. He understood. When Xiao Xian entered, the person who had been standing there stiffly raised his head to look at Xiao Xian. He wasn't sure if it was because he sensed Xiao Xian's arrival or because he smelled blood. "You're awake? Do you want a drink?" Xiao Xian handed over the fine-necked ceramic bottle. It was fresh fearsome beast blood he had obtained from the slaughterhouse. Even though this person did not seem to have any intention of attacking, Xiao Xian still remained vigilant. The strange man looked at Xiao Xian, but his expression did not change. He took the bottle from Xiao Xian's hand and stared at it. He did not control his strength well, and there was a cracking sound. There was a fist-sized hole in the bottle and the crack was still expanding. Blood flowed out from the hole. The strange man quickly used one hand to block the hole and the other hand was gentle. He probably did not expect the bottle to be so fragile. After looking at it, the strange man removed the stopper with his mouth and sniffed with his nose. It was only at times like this that he showed obvious signs of breathing. Without hesitation, he grabbed the bottle and poured it into his mouth. Only the sound of swallowing could be heard in the secret room. For people with limited strength, drinking too much ferocious beast blood would be unbearable for their bodies. Just like when Xiaofan was still a junior totem warrior, drinking a little bit of ferocious beast blood could replace a meal. However, this person directly ate the whole ferocious beast leg that day. Xiaofan didn't know whether it was because of this reason that he slept for several days. This time, he was not in a hurry. He kept a steady pace and drank almost 4 liters of beast blood. "Thank you." Although his voice sounded a little strange, Xiaofan still understood what he was saying. He raised his eyebrows. He saw how the man removed the stopper without making a sound just now. It was very smooth, as if he was very familiar with this process. "What did you remember?" Xiaofan asked. "A lot." The man paused and continued, "My name is Wuxia of the Han tribe." The man calmly told Xiaofan about the Han tribe. It was similar to what Yang Sui had told him, but Wuxia's explanation was more detailed. The people of the Han tribe liked drought. Similarly, they also liked the sun, which caused drought. That was why there was a circle in their totem. They could survive in a dry environment. On the contrary, they would not be able to adapt to places with plenty of rain. They would even fall sick. It sounded ridiculous that people with such strong physiques would fall sick in a wet environment, but it was true. The drought in the central area of the Han tribe was the most serious. The soil was desertified, especially near the fire pit. It could be said that the fire pit of the Han tribe was built on yellow sand. It was similar to the sand in the desert today. Because the trees were sparse in dry areas, even if the people of the Han tribe mastered the method of drilling wood to start a fire, they did not light it often. This made them develop the habit of eating raw meat, just like how Xiaofan saw this man eating a beast leg. Wuxia only showed obvious emotional fluctuations when he talked about the war between the Rain tribe and the Han tribe. His red eyes seemed to be flowing with blood. At that time, there were not many people from the Han tribe and the Rain tribe, only about 700 to 800 people. However, the people of the Han tribe were much stronger. They were also junior totemic warriors, but one of them could fight against 2 or more of the people of the Han tribe now. The key to a tribe's strength was not its population, but its overall strength. Of course, generally speaking, the stronger tribes had more people. However, at that time, 700 to 800 people was already considered a big tribe. Their population could not be compared to now. During the war, the Han tribe did seem to have the upper hand. The area of desertification expanded, and the Rain tribe left in the end. However, the Rain tribe did not know that although the Han tribe seemed to have won the war, they had paid a heavy price. Their fire seed had a problem. The people of the Han tribe fell one by one because of their fire seed. Their fire seed was also on the verge of collapse. At that time, the shaman of the Han tribe could not control it, so the desertification expanded. The larger the area of desertification, the more the fire seed was consumed. In the end, the shaman of the Han tribe made a decision out of regret. If this continued, the fire seed might disappear, and the Han tribe would disappear from this world. Therefore, the shaman of the Han tribe chose 10 people. Including the shaman himself, there were 11 people in total. They sacrificed themselves to stop the fire seed from being consumed. Unfortunately, we failed in the end. Our fire seed disappeared. Wuxia's face was sad. Fortunately, he did not riot. Perhaps it was because the most painful moment had passed. Xiaofan guessed as he continued to listen to Wuxia's story. After that, the shaman of the Han tribe was seriously injured. There were only 11 people left in the Han tribe. They dug an underground cave and buried their dead tribesmen in it. After a few years, Wuxia could not remember how many years had passed. The shaman of the Han tribe, who had lost his mind, could no longer hold on. Wuxia and the other 10 people did not want to continue living. Their fire seed was gone, and their hearts were dead. What was the point of living? They followed the shaman into the underground cave. They wanted to die with him. Maybe they could still see their tribesmen after they died. Although Wuxia's pronunciation was a little strange, he spoke slowly and fluently. Xiaofan could understand what he meant. Wuxia looked at his hands. If he could wake up, it meant that they were not truly dead. I have a question that I would like to ask. Seeing that Wuxia had regained his senses and did not look like he was about to go crazy, Xiaofan said, I found the power of the fire seed in your bones. This means that your fire seed did not disappear. It was absorbed into your bodies. Wuxia looked up at Xiaofan and asked anxiously, really? Didn't you notice? This area is Yanjiao territory. Did you feel the fire seed? Xiaofan asked. No, no fire seed, how could it not be? Wuxia could no longer keep his calm. Now, more and more tribes are choosing to absorb the fire seed into their tribesmen's bodies. This is because the fire seed will weaken. If it is absorbed into the tribesman's blood, it can ensure that the fire seed will not continue to weaken naturally. It can also be passed down through the bloodline of the tribesman. Xiaofan briefly explained the situation on the other side of the sea to Wuxia and explained why everyone had chosen this path. So it's not that the fire seed is gone, it's. Wuxia looked sad but he could not cry. In fact, he was not as emotional as Xiaofan had imagined. Does this mean that the Han tribe can still exist? Wuxia's eyes lit up with joy. However, Xiaofan immediately poured cold water on him. I'm afraid you don't understand what happened in the desert. Do you know how you got here? Xiaofan asked. Wuxia looked at Xiaofan and waited for Xiaofan to continue. Ever since he woke up, he had an inexplicable feeling that Xiaofan was trustworthy. He could not control this feeling. Perhaps it was due to the influence of Xiaofan's power that had awakened him. Xiaofan also briefly explained their trip to the desert. The Rain tribe and the Han tribe were mortal enemies. The war that year had caused both sides to suffer great losses. One of the powerful tribes was reduced to a small, unknown tribe and almost couldn't survive. The other tribe seemed to have won, but in reality, they lost even more and almost lost their entire tribe. However, Xiaofan did not want to see them fight, so he could only direct their hatred to the desert. I'm guessing that the other 9 tribesmen of yours are not doing so well. Xiaofan was not making wild guesses. The people of Rock Hill City could enslave the dead and turn them into puppets. From the looks of it, the Han tribesmen had already been dug out by the people of Rock Hill City and distributed to every ruler. However, due to the Han tribesmen's special physiques, they were not easy to enslave. Xiaofan did not know how many Han tribesmen had already been turned into puppets. With every word Xiaofan said, Wuxia's murderous aura grew stronger. The air seemed to be filled with blood. This made Zheng Luo, who was outside the secret room, tremble in fear. He was on guard in case the person inside suddenly attacked. If you don't believe me, I have an idea. However, I don't know how high the success rate is because I can't guarantee that it won't happen. How long? Wuxia asked. If it took too long, he would immediately leave this place and head to the desert to investigate. Soon. Whether or not it will happen depends on these few days, Xiaofan said. Wuxia did not leave. He stayed in the secret room. He would do as Xiaofan said and continue to wait here until the thing Xiaofan said happened. Seeing Xiaofan come out of the secret room, Zheng Luo hurried forward and asked, did he really remember? Looks like it. Could it be that his head was not normal when he first woke up? Now that he's sleeping, it's back to normal. Zheng Luo guessed. Then, he thought of what Xiao Xian said might happen. How should we arrange it? Send more people? No need. Just do what we usually do. It's not good to be too deliberate. That's true. Then what does he eat? Zheng Luo thought. Send someone to bring him a bottle of blood. He'll regain his senses. Also, he won't attack us before he knows what's going on. But just in case, let's be careful. If I'm free, I'll do it. Don't worry, just take care of that side. Zheng Luo pointed in the direction of Yanjiao's headquarters. He still wanted to get his hands on a crystal weapon. I'll stay here. If the situation changes, I'll look for you. Xiao Xian talked to Zheng Luo and Duo Kong again. After making some arrangements, he left the trading point and went to the headquarters. They had already begun to forge the crystal weapons. Gongjiaren and the others were not used to it yet, so Xiao Xian had to go over and keep an eye on them. 2 days later. At night, a black shadow ran along the empty trading point like a ghost in the night. He hid his aura very well. When he ran, he blended in with the sound of the wind. It was hard to detect him, at least not in the houses he passed. The black shadow approached the flaming river castle. Then, he found a gap where the guards left and climbed up the stone wall like a gecko. Hey, what are you doing there? A few Yanjiao soldiers held water moonstones and asked the person squatting on the ground not far away. My stomach hurts, so I didn't go with them to patrol. The person who stood up was dressed in the same style and accessories as the flaming river castle guards. His face was also one of the guards here. Is it serious? A person asked with concern. It's not serious. I'll be fine after some rest. Not far away, a few flaming horn warriors laughed. What did you eat? Or are you looking for an excuse to slack off? Don't get caught by Elder Zheng Luo. Ah, I know. The person standing by the wall waved his hand. You guys should go patrol too. Don't slack off. Hey, you're still talking about us? The Yanjiao soldiers laughed and left. After the Yanjiao soldiers left, the person leaning against the wall smiled. His face twitched from the pain and slowly turned into mockery. The Yanjiao guards were just so. He snuck into the flaming river castle and hid in a dark corner. None of the patrolling guards could see him. No one would pass by at this time. He took out a round wooden box and twisted open the lid. There was a brownish-yellow worm the length of a fingernail inside. The person looked at the worm wriggling against the wall of the box. It stopped at a spot and knocked its head against the wall. Seeing this, the person closed the lid and snuck towards the direction the worm was pointing at. He avoided the Yanjiao soldiers on the way. He walked and stopped, looked at the direction the worm was pointing at, and found the approximate location of the entrance to the secret underground room. There were people moving around. The person waited for a while, then shook the hand behind his back. A thin piece like a cicada's wing popped out. It was shaped like the claws of a beast that had been flattened. He was about to kill the 2 Yanjiao soldiers guarding the entrance when he heard footsteps. He had no choice but to wait. Hey, you two, the boss is calling for you, the person shouted at the people at the entrance. What's the matter? The 2 were confused. I don't know. The boss said he has something to tell you. It should be about that strange person. Go and come back quickly. The 3 of them left as they spoke. The person hiding in the dark waited for the footsteps to fade away before coming out. With his rich experience, he could easily find the exact location of the entrance. He carefully pulled open the stone slab at the entrance. He was still cursing the Yanjiao soldiers for putting such a heavy slab here. After entering the secret underground room, there were no water moonstones around. There was no light, but there was no one around either. He didn't take out any light crystals and walked forward. He checked and confirmed that there was no one around. There wasn't even any breathing or heartbeat. He took out a small bead and the round box with the worm. He wanted to see which secret room it was. He walked to one of the stone doors and used some strength to pull it open. He cursed the Yanjiao soldiers again for using such heavy stone doors. Finally, he pulled open an opening. He cautiously sensed around. There was no one, no breathing, no heartbeat, and not even a pulse. But the target was here. Looking inside, it found a long wooden box on the ground. The lid of the wooden box was closed. Looking at the appearance of the wooden box, it was exactly as described by its employer. This was it. Chapter 759. Although his night vision wasn't the best in the organization, it wasn't bad either. After all, he could see more clearly when there was light. Since there was no one here, he didn't intend to let himself suffer. Moreover, for the sake of caution, he still needed to take a good look at the big wooden box to see if it was the one his employer had mentioned. He didn't want to make a mistake on this trip. The small round bead didn't shine as brightly as the water moon stone. It seemed to be covered by a light shield, making it more hidden. The light was different from different angles. At this time, most of the light was shining on the wooden box. He opened the lid of the wooden box and looked inside. He frowned. This was different from what his employer said. His employer said that Yanjiao had stolen a monster like the puppets in the desert. He had seen those puppets before, so he knew what his employer was talking about. But the one in front of him, although it looked a little strange compared to a normal person, it wasn't too different. Anyway, it didn't look like the puppets in the desert. It looked more like the Yanjiao had put a dead person here. Wasn't it? Was it the wrong one? How could it be? Feeling suspicious, he opened the round box again and looked at the worm inside. It stopped at this position. Could it be that it wasn't this secret room, but another secret room in this direction? As he lowered his head and thought, he suddenly felt a strong and cold murderous aura. It gave him goosebumps on his back and made his hair stand on end. He had been stealing for years, so of course he knew. Every time he had this feeling, he only had to do one thing: run. However, when he quickly put away the box and looked away, he found that the person he thought was a dead body lying inside had opened his eyes. The blood-red eyes were looking at him, and the expressionless face was moving. Not good. Seeing this, he thought that the Yanjiao had set up an ambush here and let someone pretend to be a dead body to lure him here. He cursed the Yanjiao in his heart. How cunning. Just as he was about to leave, he found that his left arm, which was leaning on the wooden box, was grabbed. It was like being grabbed by the claws of a fierce beast. Without hesitation, he shook his arm. Crack, 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 a series of bone-cracking sounds could be heard. The arm that Wuxia was grabbing was twisted in an instant. However, it wasn't broken by Wuxia's grip. Instead, it was his own body that had changed. The bones in his arm became as slippery as a loach. They became thinner, curved, and slipped out of Wuxia's hand. After leaving the other party's palm, although his arm once again formed the shape of a long arm bone amidst a series of cracking sounds, it was not without a price. Intense pain quickly spread from his arm to his brain, and his nerves felt as if they were being plucked one after another. Hissing sounds came from between his teeth. He didn't dare to shout loudly for fear of attracting more Yanjiao. He didn't have the time to wonder how this person could fool him by pretending to be dead, nor did he have the time to wonder if this was a deliberate arrangement by the Yanjiao people, or if this was just another secret the Yanjiao people were hiding. Right now, he just wanted to leave this place and make plans later. The person in the wooden box had already sat up. Seeing that he was about to chase after Wuxia, the person twisted his waist, raised his knee, and swept his leg towards Wuxia. He wanted to knock Gan Xia down again and buy him more time. In response to the person's kick, Gan Xia raised his arm to block it. Bang! When the leg and arm collided, Gan Xia only moved slightly. He didn't stop standing up. On the other hand, the person who had sneaked in felt a sharp pain in his calf. It was as if he hadn't kicked a person's arm, but a hard metal object. The person who had sneaked in felt even worse. To be able to get to where he was today, he definitely wasn't weak. In the past, when he fought with people, his leg was like a whip that could break people's bones. But now, not only did he fail to knock Gan Xia down, he almost broke his own leg with a kick. This was unbelievable. Retreat. In the face of such an opponent, he didn't want to fight anymore. He knew that his opponent was difficult to deal with, but he didn't care about Gan Xia. Hence, the person ignored Gan Xia and ran towards the stone door of the secret room. Like a gust of wind, he was about to slip out in the blink of an eye. Unfortunately, the moment he reached the stone door, the door, which was wide enough for two people, was closed with a bang. He ran too fast and didn't stop. The person who had sneaked in crashed into the stone door. The dust on the door was shaken off by the impact. Motherfucker Yanjiao people. If he still didn't know who was behind all this, he would really be an idiot. When he saw the person lying inside, he suspected that the Yanjiao people had already prepared for this. Now, he was sure. He grabbed the dented part of the stone door and pulled, but it didn't move an inch. As he cursed, the man heard the approaching footsteps behind him. He couldn't care less about continuing to pull the door open. He lowered his body, swung his shoulders, and bent his arms. Without turning his head, he threw a series of elbow strikes, hitting the people behind him like a torrential rain. Bang 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 bang. It was as if he had hit a hard rock instead of a human body. Gan Xia stared at the person in front of him without blinking. It was as if he wasn't the one who was hit. He took 2 small steps back and regained his balance. Then, he raised his leg and kicked the person behind the stone door. The strength of this kick was far greater than the previous one. The strong force landed on the person's abdomen and sent him crashing into the stone door. The sound of bones breaking could be heard in the air. The person who was kicked landed heavily on the ground with a muffled thud. He curled up and wailed in pain. Outside the door, Xiaofan stood by the stone door. He held the door with both hands to prevent it from being opened. He was the one who closed the door just now. Duo Kong and Zheng Luo, who had rushed over, heard the banging sounds and patted the dust off their bodies. Is that Han tribesman really all right? After all, this person could be one of the robbers. Zheng Luo was worried. Not only were the robbers not caught, but Gan Xia, who had just been resurrected, was also killed. It's fine. It's just that Gan Xia has an advantage in here. Most bandits were known for their fast speed and ability to escape. However, if they were trapped in a small space, their escape skills would not be of much use. If they could maintain their stamina, it would be fine. However, if they could not hold on for long, they could only be beaten up. Plus, Gan Xia probably needs to vent, Xiaofan said. He had been like a corpse for many years. It wasn't easy for him to wake up with external help, only to realize that everything he knew was wrong. Even if they tried to save him, it was too late. His tribe was gone and he had become like a ghost. His digestive system had changed and he couldn't eat many things anymore. The most convenient way was to drink blood. Who could bear to turn from a normal person into this? He had never been able to release his pent-up emotions. Perhaps this time, he could use the robbers to vent. Hearing Xiaofan's words, Zheng Luo and Duo Kong thought it was a good idea. After all, they were robbers. They would feel good if they could make the robbers suffer. Why wouldn't they? After thinking it through, Zheng Luo and Duo Kong were no longer in a hurry. They sat outside and waited. Their ears perked up, listening to the sounds inside and guessing the situation. Inside the secret room, Wuxia walked towards the intruder step by step. His footsteps weren't loud, but he maintained an even speed and strength. Tap, 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 every sound sent chills down the intruder's spine. He felt the temperature in the secret room drop sharply. The intruder realized that the intruder wasn't panting. No heartbeat. Not even breathing. If it was a normal person, even if they could fool him by pretending to be dead, they would still be panting, their heartbeat would change, and their blood flow would change. He knew all these too well. In the past, he would use these to understand his opponent's true emotions. After all, facial expressions and actions could be deceiving. However, some of the characteristics of the body could reflect a person's true emotions. But now, all of these were useless. This person was really like a corpse. If it wasn't for the fact that he looked so different from the puppets in the desert, the intruder would have thought that this was what he was looking for. No, maybe, the intruder was shocked when he thought of this possibility. At this moment, Wuxia was already in front of the man who was curled up on the ground. Suddenly, the man slid away from the stone door and away from Wuxia like a loach. Then, with a sudden movement of his ankle, he spun up. His hands, which were originally hugging his abdomen, opened outwards. Dozens of sharpened small spindle-shaped blades flew out and drew different arcs in the air. Wherever the blades passed, the air seemed to be cut into pieces. With a series of whooshing sounds, the sharp blades pierced into various parts of Wuxia's body. Instantly, Wuxia's chest, back, shoulders, thighs, and even his neck and head were pierced by thin, spindle-shaped blades. However, the intruder's heart sank when he threw these blades out. Something was wrong. These hidden weapons that could easily pierce through animal skins and wooden planks seemed to have hit a harder rock. They couldn't go any further. Only a part of them was stuck in and the other part was exposed. Even if they couldn't penetrate deeply, they would still cause some damage. However, the person who was pierced like a hedgehog didn't seem to notice the injuries on his body. He didn't even make a sound and maintained his original appearance. He didn't even blink. Also, blood would flow out if he was pierced. However, he didn't smell any blood. It was as if this person didn't have any blood. How was this possible? While the intruder was still in shock, Wuxia was like an agile monkey in the forest. He changed his slow pace and sped up, chasing after the intruder who was trying to escape. The intruder had the advantage in terms of speed. However, he was already injured and dodging consumed a lot of energy. After a while, his dodging speed slowed down. At this moment, an arm that was much thinner than the Yanjiao's arm smashed into his back. The force behind the blow sent him flying. His face slammed into the wall with a loud bang. His nose was broken and 2 of his teeth were broken. The smell of blood filled his mouth. Outside the door, Duo Kong shook his head when he heard the sound of something crashing into the wall. Why are the robbers so daring? They don't learn from their mistakes. Didn't robber 11, 12, 6, and 7 all suffer at the hands of the Yanjiao? How dare they come here? Could it be someone else? Duo Kong asked. No, it's very likely, Zheng Luo said. No matter who it is, we'll find out soon. Xiao Xian listened to the commotion inside. It wouldn't last long. They would find out soon. What if Wuxia kills him? Duo Kong asked. I don't think so. After all, he's the one who wants to know the truth the most, Xiao Xian said. In the secret chamber, the person who had been beaten to a pulp felt a mixture of physical pain and shock in his heart. He couldn't believe that what he had just experienced was real. However, he was the one who had been beaten, so he had no choice but to believe it. The person in front of him had no heartbeat or breath. It was as if he didn't even need to breathe. He was too similar to the strange puppets in the desert. Could it be that the Yanjiao had already gained control of another type of monster similar to the desert puppets? He knew about the puppets in the desert. In order to completely immobilize them, one had to break their bones bit by bit. The monster in front of him was probably the same. However, it was too difficult to do that to the person in front of him. His bones were too hard. He knew that he couldn't win against such a powerful puppet. If he continued, he would only be beaten to death. He had to escape. However, the stone door was tightly shut and he couldn't open it. He couldn't defeat the person inside either. He could only try his best to avoid the opponent's attacks and stall for time. Perhaps he could talk to the Yanjiao people? Just as that person was about to escape, a hand pressed down on his head, pushing him down as he was about to take a step forward. His legs knelt on the ground. His bones hit the stone floor with a loud thud. The man screamed in pain again. His fingers gripped the scimitar that looked like a beast's claws and slashed at the hand pressing down on his head. Poof poof poof. The sound of the weapon slashing against Wuxia's arm was strange. It didn't sound like a normal person's arm. It didn't feel right either. When he slashed, the man purposely aimed for a few important blood vessels on Wuxia's arm. However, just like before, there was no sound of blood spurting out. There wasn't even the smell of blood. Moreover, when the scimitar broke through Wuxia's skin and touched his bones, it was as if it was blocked by a hard metal object. It couldn't go any further. The more he thought about it, the colder his heart became. The hand on his head didn't move an inch. In the darkness, the man could make out the general appearance of the person holding his head. He could also see that the other person's eyes were different from normal people's. Those eyes were cold and emotionless. No, the hand on his head didn't have any warmth either. A cold chill seeped into his limbs and bones. Every bone in his body seemed to be unable to withstand the chill and was trembling. Especially when he felt the fingers on his head begin to tighten. He really could not hold it in any longer. He was afraid that if he was a step late, his head would not be complete. Don't kill me. I didn't want to come here. Someone asked me to come here. It's Su Lu. It's Su Lu, the second young master of Fallen Leaves City in Rock Hill City. In the face of the fear of death, the man's face contorted with pain became even more ferocious. It was as if he was throwing caution to the wind and yelling with all his might. He was afraid that the Yanjiao outside the secret chamber wouldn't be able to hear him. At this point, he no longer cared about the benefits that Su Lu had promised him. Although the thought of those benefits still made his heart ache. He wanted nothing more than to kill the Yanjiao who had set this trap. But now, he was the one who had lost. He could only admit defeat. At a time like this, if he didn't use Su Lu as a shield, was he supposed to attract the hatred himself? After yelling, the man felt the hand on his head stop tightening. He relaxed and thought to himself, sure enough, it's more useful to use someone else as a shield. Perhaps he should have said more. That way, he could have negotiated with the Yanjiao to save his life. As for the Yanjiao and Su Lu, let them fight it out. It would be best if both sides suffered great losses. The man lowered his head slightly and panted heavily. Every time he breathed, he felt immense pain in his body. His eyes flashed with ruthlessness as he looked at the stone door from the corner of his eyes. But in the next moment, the man, who had just heaved a sigh of relief, felt his body freeze again. Someone spoke, but the voice didn't come from outside the door. It came from above him. Who are you? And who is Su Lu? The voice was a little strange. Some of the words used were also strange. But this didn't stop him from understanding the other party. He raised his head in shock. The hand on his head was still pressing down, so he could only raise it slightly. He tried his best to look up and meet the other party's eyes. What? The man, whose head was pressed down, trembled as he spoke. Who are you? And who is Su Lu? Gan Xie thought that the man didn't understand and spoke slower this time. What Gan Xie didn't know was that the man on the ground couldn't believe what he was seeing. It wasn't that he didn't understand. Wasn't this another type of puppet that Yanjiao had imitated the Rock Hill City people to control? Wasn't this a corpse? No, that couldn't be right. A controlled corpse puppet couldn't speak. Then what was this thing in front of him? Or, was this a helper that Yanjiao had found? Gan Xie saw that the man didn't speak. He pressed down harder on the man's head. Feeling the pain on his head, the man finally snapped out of his shock. Now wasn't the time to dwell on these questions. I'll talk. Don't hit me. I'll tell you everything. Feeling the fingers on his head stop, the man's Adam's apple bobbed. He swallowed a mouthful of blood and tried his best to calm down so that he could analyze the situation and find a scapegoat. It was Su Lu who found me. He said that he lost something important and that Yanjiao stole it. He asked me to help him find it. It's true. He even gave me a bug box to look for it. As he spoke, the man took out the bug box. Although the bug box was made of wood, it was very resilient. When the man was beaten up, the bug box was also affected. However, there were only some dents on the bug box. The inside of the box didn't change much. Gan Xie looked inside the opened bug box. The wriggling worm was wriggling in his direction. It was using its head to knock against the wall of the box. The man obviously noticed it as well. His expression changed as he turned the wooden box in his hand, turning the worm against the wall of the box to face him. However, when he stopped, the worm started moving again. It crawled along the wooden box and the wall of the box. Then, it stopped in front of Gan Xie and used its head to knock against the wall of the box. The man's hand that was holding the wooden box began to tremble. The worm's reaction was enough to prove the identity of the man in front of him. This was the lost thing that Su Lu had mentioned. This was the goal of his trip. After realizing this, the man's heart was filled with regret. Su Lu, you fucking lied to me. Didn't you say that the Yanjiao stole something similar to those puppets in the desert? Didn't you say that the lost thing was an ancient corpse that couldn't be more dead? Then, who was the person who had beaten him half to death and almost crushed his head into pieces? How was this person similar to those puppets in the desert that resembled dried corpses? Oh, this weirdo could still talk. Other than the fact that he didn't have a heartbeat, didn't bleed, and didn't pant, which part of him resembled an ancient corpse that had been dead for a long time? Or did he come to life? I don't fucking believe it. Chapter 760. I've been tricked. That was what the intruder was thinking. He hated Su Lu for it. If Su Lu had told him the truth, he definitely wouldn't have accepted this mission. Although he desperately needed merits to raise his ranking, he wouldn't risk his life. As for Gan Xie, when the intruder mentioned Su Li's name, his murderous aura intensified. Before this, Xiao Xian had told him that if he wanted to know if Rock Hill City really existed in the desert and if they really used the Han tribesmen as puppets, all he had to do was wait a few days. Xiao Xian knew that Su Lu wouldn't give up so easily. If they really valued the Han tribesmen like Gan Xie, they would definitely think of a way to snatch him back. Xiao Xian didn't know if the Han tribesmen had the same physique as Gan Xie, but with Gan Xie's physique, if he was turned into a puppet, he would definitely be a powerful force. Su Lu would definitely think of a way to get someone to steal something so important back. If no one came after a few days, it would mean that Su Lu didn't value Gan Xie that much. Xiao Xian would also let Gan Xie go to the desert. However, reality proved that Su Lu did value Gan Xie a lot. Why did Su Lu send you here? Gan Xie asked again. He wanted to know why Su Lu valued him so much. For the sake of survival, the intruder didn't want to waste too much time talking. He directly told them everything he knew about Su Lu to attract their hatred. Fortunately, he had asked a lot of questions before accepting this mission. Su Lu said that the stolen item was very important. It was given to him by an important person in Rock Hill City. After some time, he would have to hand it over to someone else. He had to find it on time, or else he would be punished, because the intruder spoke very loudly. Even though the secret room was soundproof, Xiaoxian and Zheng Luo could still hear him. Moreover, Xiaoxian had already opened the door slightly, so they could hear him even more clearly. Xiaoxian thought of the person from the Yi family. The construction of Rock Hill City in the desert was due to the ominous contribution of the Yi family. Some people even suspected that the construction of Rock Hill City in that location and the avoidance of the disaster was due to Yi Xiong of the Yi family. It was rumored that Yi Si had a hand in the incident with the desert monsters. Even Yi Xiong thought so. Yi Xiong might have been the one who found the Han tribesmen. The tombs the tribesmen left for themselves were not easy to find, and those who could find them were not ordinary people. Do they have more people like me? Wuxia asked. This was what he wanted to know the most. Yes, there is. The eyes of the person whose head was pressed to the ground moved. He felt that he was so smart to be able to hear the urgency in this strange person's words. Immediately, he thought quickly and made a decision. He continued, there is, but I heard from them that other than you, the others have already been made into puppets. Ouch, ouch, ouch. Don't kill me, I still have a lot to say. When he heard the first sentence, Wuxia was happy. However, when he heard the second sentence, he was furious. He almost lost control of his strength. Are you telling the truth? Wuxia asked. The intruder vaguely understood the key words and quickly nodded. Yes. I'm telling the truth. I swear. It's because everyone else has been made into puppets and you're the only one left. This is a hurdle for the others. As you all know, there's more than one person in Rock Hill City who can control puppets. If any of them can turn you into a puppet and cross that hurdle, they'll be promoted. As for the person beside Su Lu, if he can't turn you into a puppet within the stipulated time, he'll have to give you to the next person. In other words, other than Wuxia, everyone else in the Han tribe had been turned into puppets. The reason they kept Wuxia alive was to give the other controllers a test. Whoever could solve this question would be promoted. Wuxia was just a test subject. Everyone who took the test had a limited amount of time to solve the question. If they couldn't solve the question within the time limit, they'd have to give it to the next candidate. No wonder Su Lu and the person beside him were so anxious. Not only did they fail to solve the question, they even lost it. If others knew about this, especially the higher-ups, how could they survive in the desert? How could Su Lu, who had always been ambitious to become the next lord of Luoya City, compete with the third young master, Su Gu? Xiaoxian sensed that Wuxia's aura was unstable. He vaguely looked like he was when he was agitated. He was worried that Wuxia would crush the intruder to death. He knocked on the stone door and opened it wider. Wuxia and the intruder looked at the stone door. Xiaoxian looked at the person who was caught and asked, "Is this your robber account?" Stolen numbers were the numbers within the word thief. This was what Xiaoxian learned from the people who used to be thieves. Robber 11. The intruder saw that the Yanjiao had finally revealed himself. Xiaoxian shook his head, "You're not. I've seen Robber 11 before. The one you saw was the previous Robber 11. I'm the current Robber 11. The intruder quickly said. Your ranking changed again? Xiaoxian asked, Is the previous Robber 7 dead? The current Robber 11 was shocked. The Yanjiao had an old grudge against the robbers. He had already cursed Robber 7 countless times in his mind. No. If you're talking about the Robber 7 from a few years ago, he's still Robber 7 now. It's said that one time when he failed a mission, Robber 6, who was with him, blew the whistle and was rescued by others. Robber 6 and Robber 7 were useless. You might not know this, but we have a rule, especially the top 10. If they failed a mission and blew the whistle for help, their ranking will drop by 1 place. Robber 6 and Robber 7 were demoted because of that failure. However, because someone before them died, their overall ranking rose by 1 place. They're really lucky. Robber 11 didn't finish his sentence. Other than Robber 2, who was in front of Robber 6, Robber 9 was also killed on the other side of the sea. With 2 deaths, those who were once in the 11th and 12th place were now in the top 10. As for Robber 11, he was once in the 13th place and was now Robber 11. He was only 1 step away from the top 10. He didn't dare to cross the sea to the other side of the continent. He didn't want to be killed like Robber 9. Therefore, he was waiting for someone to die before him. He just needed to maintain his achievements. Now that Su Lu came looking for him, Robber 11 was tempted. It wasn't just because of the benefits Su Lu promised. The Yanjiao tribe was in the limelight. If he could steal something from the Yanjiao tribe, his achievements would be even greater. He might even be able to squeeze the people in front of him down the list. The Yanjiao tribe was strong, but there were only so many of them. After he found out the location of his target with the help of the worm, he observed the surroundings of the Flaming River Castle for a few days. There weren't many guards inside, and there were also many people from other tribes. He liked places where people were mixed because it was convenient for him to hide. However, Robber 11 didn't expect the Yanjiao to set up a trap for him. Robber 6 and Robber 7? Blow the whistle? Xiaofan recalled the situation in the forest when they were looking for the green-faced fanged beast. Robber 6 was the one helping Robber 7. They blew the whistle and were rescued. Robber 11 was still talking, obviously insulting Robber 6 and 7 and cursing Su Lu. Xiaofan suddenly asked, "Do you know why Robber 6 and 7 were demoted?" Robber 11, who was in the midst of mocking Xiaofan, was stunned. He looked at Xiaofan in confusion. At the same time, he had a bad feeling. Back then, Robber 6 and 7 wanted to steal something from Yanjiao. They were chased by me, so they had no choice but to blow the whistle. Otherwise, they would have been smashed to death. Xiaofan closed the stone door again. Robbers were more hated than Changles. Not only did they take pride in stealing, they would do anything to get it. Back then, some of the people from other tribes who entered the forest with Xiaofan were killed by robbers. Tonight, if it weren't for Xiaofan's arrangements, some Yanjiao people would have been killed as well. For example, the 2 Yanjiao people who were guarding the entrance of the secret passage. Robber 11, who was locked inside, was stunned by Xiaofan's words. He wasn't one of the top 10 robbers. He didn't have many resources and he wasn't well informed. It wasn't easy for him to find out the movements of the top 10 robbers. Of course, he didn't know why Robber 6 and 7 were demoted. If he knew that Robber 6 and 7 were killed by Yanjiao people, he wouldn't have come here even if he was beaten to death. Su Lu, you fucking set me up. Robber 11 thought. If he could get out of here alive, he would definitely kill Su Lu and everyone around him. Unfortunately, Wuxia didn't plan on letting him go. Wuxia already knew from Xiaofan that the puppets in the desert were lifeless creatures with no self-consciousness. The remaining people in his tribe were all turned into puppets. In other words, he was the only one who was truly alive. But in reality, Wuxia himself couldn't continue the Han tribe. He couldn't be considered a normal person anymore. If Xiaofan didn't bring him here, he could imagine what would have happened to him. No matter what Xiaofan's original intentions were, Xiaofan did bring him back to life. He hated the Rain tribe, but in comparison, he hated the people in Rock Hill City who turned his people into puppets. They were his enemies. In his grief and anger, this robber 11 who wanted to bring him back to Rock Hill City and hand him over to his enemies became even more despicable. This time, Xiaoxian didn't come in to interrupt. Ganxia's rising anger made the energy in his body restless. His red eyes glowed fiercely as if his blood was boiling. It was as if he was about to break through the barrier in front of him. An aura of grief and indignation seeped out of his body and surged forward. A long howl suddenly sounded. The air in the secret room churned as if a hurricane had been set off. Robber 11, who was pressed in front of Ganxia, felt it the most intensely. His entire body trembled from the wind and he was shocked. This wasn't a sound that could be made by a normal person's throat and lungs. The sound was formed by the airflow coming out of his nostrils and the roar coming from his mouth. It was like the roar of a nocturnal beast in the forest. The entire secret room was shaking. Not just the secret room, but the entire flaming river castle was shaking. After a pause, a second long howl followed. An even fiercer aura erupted from Ganxia's body. With Ganxia as the epicenter, it surged outwards. This second howl was louder than the first. The rising energy turned into a roar. The dust on the floor, ceiling, and everywhere else was pulled out by this howl. It flew up and down along with the turbulent airflow. The howl came from the flaming river castle. However, because of some narrow vents and the echoes within the castle, the howl had an inexplicable sense of strangeness. It sent chills down the spines of those who heard it in the night. Many people woke up from their dreams. Many travelers were already on high alert. The sound made them sit up straight from their animal hide cushions. They took out their weapons and looked outside. There was nothing outside except for those who were frightened and went out to see what was going on. What's going on? Are there fearsome beasts? I didn't hear the Yinjiao's warning. The last time a fearsome beast came, they blew the whistle. Maybe the Yinjiao people forgot to blow the whistle? Or maybe they didn't want to blow the whistle. The conspiracy theorist's mind started to wander as he thought of all the possibilities. The birds in the nearby forest screamed and flew away, not caring about their confused sense of direction in the night. This made people feel even more uneasy. The howl sounded 3 times, each time more terrifying than the last. Some people guessed that the Yinjiao must have secretly raised a fearsome beast to guard the flaming river castle. It was just that no one knew about it. No one knew why it was exposed this time. Maybe it was to guard against people who wanted to sneak into the flaming river castle. The howl made some people give up on the idea of entering the castle, but it also made some people restless, like the Chonglis. Not long ago, they left the flaming river castle and went out to play. They saw the customs of different tribes and even watched some tribes merge their fire seeds. However, to them, those tribes were too poor, so they didn't want to help. In the end, they decided to go back to the flaming river trading point. This time, they came back for a few days. They couldn't stay idle and wanted to leave again, but they didn't expect to encounter something like this. I really want to go in and take a look, Wu He said. Aren't you afraid of being caught by the Yinjiao again? Someone beside Wu He disagreed. The experience last time was too deep. He didn't want to go through it again. Among them, some agreed, some disagreed. In the end, Wu He went to EC in the middle of the night to ask him. He had been taken advantage of before, so this time, he wanted to listen to EC's opinion. EC was startled awake by the 3 strange howls at the flaming river castle. Now that it was quiet, he was woken up by Wu He again. He was still yawning. When he heard Wu He's words, EC stopped yawning and said, "If you want to die, go ahead. Don't tell me you know me. Don't drag me down." When he heard EC's words, Wu He became anxious. What? Are you saying that it's very dangerous inside and we won't be able to come back? With your strength, you definitely won't be able to come back, EC said confidently. Seeing that Wu He didn't believe him, EC pointed at the grasshopper who was still hiding in the corner with a vigilant look. The spikes on its back were still there. Do you see that? You're so scared. Then what's inside the flaming river castle? Is it a human or a beast? Wu He was still curious. The Changlu people were naturally curious. It was their nature to be curious. I don't care. I only know that I'll die a horrible death if I go in. If you want to go, then go. EC didn't want to waste any more time with them. He asked the grasshopper to chase them away. He looked in the direction of the flaming river castle and whispered, "These Yanjiao people are getting more and more confusing." What is it? After the commotion at night died down, Zheng Luo called a few important guards over and scolded them harshly. Only then did the guards know that someone had sneaked into the flaming river castle. He didn't tell too many people before this, mainly because it was a better plan. He needed to keep it a secret. At the same time, Zheng Luo had another idea. He wanted to use this incident to teach the Yanjiao people a lesson. Now, many Yanjiao people were more like nouveau riche than real masters who had lived for thousands of years. Even if Yanjiao's ancestors were arrogant, they weren't like this. Their mentality wasn't right. However, the mentality of the Yanjiao people wasn't something that could be adjusted in just a few years. The alarm bells couldn't stop ringing. Once they stopped ringing, they would relax. In the secret underground room, there were all kinds of poisonous gas and hidden weapons everywhere. Robber 11 had tried everything he could before he died. Unfortunately, he still couldn't escape from Wuxia. The next day, when Xiao Xian went in, Wuxia was standing there in a daze. There was blood on his hands and his eyes were unfocused. He looked like he was frozen. Xiao Xian wasn't surprised. It wasn't the first time he was like this. He looked at Robber 11's body on the ground. It was still intact. Last night, Wuxia's emotions were turbulent. However, it wasn't as intense as Xiao Xian expected. It was strange. If someone knew what Xiao Xian was thinking, they would definitely refute him. Last night, this person was roaring like a wild beast. The entire flaming river castle shook. His roar could be heard outside the castle. Everyone in the trading point was shocked awake. How was that not intense? However, when you thought about what happened to Wuxia, it wasn't intense. This was why Xiao Xian didn't stop him last night. Wuxia's emotions were a little strange. In the secret room, the person standing there quietly looked very calm. It was as if the person who roared last night wasn't him. He was frighteningly calm. "It's strange," Wuxia said. "What's strange?" Xiao Xian asked. "I don't feel too sad or angry." Wuxia's words weren't very clear. Luckily, he said the important words clearly. Xiao Xian also understood. Wuxia realized that his emotions weren't that intense. There were emotions of sadness and hatred, but they weren't that intense. This wasn't normal. His roar was very fierce, but it was different from the hysteria caused by intense emotions. Moreover, he calmed down too quickly. Xiao Xian thought that Wuxia was cold-hearted, but he didn't expect that to be the case. Xiao Xian didn't answer him. He knew that Wuxia wasn't stupid. After he woke up, Wuxia's thinking had gradually returned to normal. Back then, the shaman of the Han tribe had chosen someone in a desperate situation, so he probably wasn't stupid either. Other than strength, intelligence was also part of the shaman's consideration. Most shamans had the same mentality. They only chose the right and most suitable person. As for Wuxia's current situation, he probably already knew the answer. Xiao Xian didn't need to say more. "You didn't sleep last night?" Xiao Xian asked. This person stood with his eyes open the whole night. Shouldn't he sleep standing up? Was he really a zombie? Sleep? No, I don't need to sleep anymore, Wuxia said slowly. After a pause, he said, I've slept enough. Actually, it wasn't that he had slept enough. Wuxia really didn't need to sleep like a normal person. Sleep was a periodic adjustment of the body, but Wuxia didn't need it. His body was no longer a normal body. He didn't need this kind of adjustment. For example, when he forced Robber 11 to slow down, he didn't feel tired. He didn't feel tired because he wasn't exhausted. What do you plan to do now? Go to the desert? Xiaofan asked. No, Wuxia said, now is not the time. From Robber 11's words yesterday, Wuxia knew that he couldn't fight against Rock Hill City on his own. The fact that they could turn his tribesmen into puppets showed that they were very powerful. If it was a normal Han tribesman, he might have rushed to the desert on impulse. However, Wuxia calmly analyzed the pros and cons and made the most suitable choice for himself. There was another reason. He didn't understand the current world. After so many years, everything seemed to have changed. He needed time to get used to it. No one remembered that there was a tribe called Han. If he didn't wake up, even his totem would have disappeared. I want to stay here, Wuxia said. Okay. Xiaofan didn't mention too many conditions. With Wuxia's intelligence, he should know what to do if he wanted to stay here. Where do you want to stay? Xiaofan asked. Here. Wuxia looked around the secret room. His gaze stopped at the broken wooden box. He pointed at it and asked Xiaofan, do you still have that? Sure, I'll get someone to make another one. Dry wood. Using sun-dried wood? Sure, we have dry wood for our ships. It's sturdy enough. I want to take a look outside. Wuxia tried his best to express his thoughts with the few words he had. Xiaofan looked at the hidden weapons on Wuxia's body. Don't you need to remove them first? No. He just wanted to look outside. Okay, I'll bring you out. Xiaofan led Wuxia out of the secret room and up the underground passage. Although the people in the Flaming River Castle had already been informed of the existence of this strange person, they were still shocked when they first saw him. Putting aside the fact that he had green skin, there were sharp blades all over his body, and some parts of his skin were flipped open. There were also obvious cuts so deep that the bones could be seen. If he was an ordinary person, he would have died long ago. However, this person didn't even bleed. It was as if all the wounds and sharp weapons on his body didn't exist. He followed Xiaofan with a stiff face. Xiaofan didn't bring him out. Instead, he brought him to the Flaming River Tower. If we go up, we'll reach the top of the Flaming River Tower. However, I think it's fine here, Xiaofan said. Wuxia stood here and could see the entire trading point. He could also see the mountains and forests in the distance. Everything had changed. The houses, the people's clothes, everything was different from what he had seen in the depths of his memory. It was like a new world. Time seemed to have passed for a long time. The sun was high in the sky, shining through the window. Wuxia reached out his hand and touched the place where Yang Guang's light shone. After a while, he retracted his hand. It was a little hot, much hotter than his body temperature. It felt like he was being burned. As expected, he doesn't like it, Wuxia muttered. How could a tribe with a sun in their totem not like the sun? It was just that everything had changed. His preferences had changed too. Chapter 761. Wuxia temporarily settled down in the Flaming River Castle. Xiaofan's underground secret room was his room, and Xiaofan had another secret room prepared for him. Perhaps it was because his body had changed, but Wuxia no longer ate beast meat. Instead, he drank blood directly. Every day, the slaughterhouse would send him some blood collected from the beasts they killed. Perhaps to some people, it was a pity that they couldn't eat delicious food, but to Wuxia, it was simple as long as he could live. Wuxia didn't like the sun. He preferred the dark underground secret room. When he was lying down, he would lie in a coffin-like wooden box made of dry wood. He didn't need to sleep, and would only lie down when he was deep in thought. When Wuxia came out at night, he would listen to the Yanjiao guards talk about the mainland. This was agreed upon by Xiaofan and Zheng Luo. Wuxia's ability to express himself was limited. He was also an antique, and he didn't even know what pottery was. Perhaps it was because he had been buried underground for so long that he couldn't speak fluently. He even had a strange accent. Perhaps Wuxia would be able to change if he listened to other people's words. On the other hand, the Yanjiao people didn't completely trust Wuxia. After all, they weren't from the same tribe. Wuxia was too dangerous, especially at night when most people weren't in a good state of mind. It was better to have a person like this in front of them than not to see him at all. At first, the guards were nervous when they saw Wuxia. They had heard the screams that night, but they didn't expect it to be made by a human. Gradually, they got used to it. Wuxia was actually quite easy to get along with. He didn't talk much, and even if he did, he would only say a few words. If the Yanjiao needed help, he would help the guards. He even helped catch a few people who wanted to sneak into the Flaming River Castle at night. His senses were stronger than the guards. As for the Rain Tribe, Xiaofan had already told Wuxia about it. As former enemies, Wuxia didn't have a good impression of the Rain Tribe. However, when he heard about the Rain Tribe's current situation, he suddenly remembered the Han shaman's regretful look. Perhaps they shouldn't have fought so hard back then. Both sides had suffered great losses, resulting in the current situation. However, with the players from Rock Hill City drawing aggro, Wuxia placed most of his aggro on Desert City. Plus, Wuxia's hatred towards the Rain Tribe wasn't that strong. Since the Rain Tribe had a good relationship with Yanjiao, and he was relying on Yanjiao, he wouldn't touch the Rain Tribe for the time being. On the other hand, what shocked Wuxia the most was what Xiaofan had mentioned about the situation on the mainland. After the fusion of the fire seed, the tribe might disappear? Could disbanded tribesmen form new groups? Wuxia couldn't believe it. This overturned everything he knew. As a tribesman whose thoughts were stuck in the past, Wuxia was very curious about this. He didn't understand what it was like to leave their tribe and form a new group with outsiders. What kind of feelings did they have? It was rare for something to distract Wuxia. Xiaofan thought for a moment and said, "If you're interested in the other side of the sea, you can ask someone." Ask who? Wuxia was puzzled. He really wanted to know more now. The world today was too new. There were all kinds of handmade products, from pottery to metal, and the changes in the tribe's fire seed. All of these changed his perception of the world. He had already learned a lot from the Yanjiao people on duty at night. It turned out that there was another piece of land on the other side of the sea. The two pieces of land were close to each other because of the natural disaster, and there were people coming and going from both sides. There are people from the other side of the sea in the Flaming River Castle too. I'll take you there. Xiaofan looked at the sun outside. It was morning now, and Yangguang was fine today. Wuxia didn't like to move around during the day, but the people there were asleep at night. Wuxia didn't like to walk under the sun anymore, but he could endure it if he wanted to know more. Putting on a hooded cloak, Wuxia followed Xiaofan out of the Flaming River Castle. Wearing a hood in the middle of the day and covering his entire body was indeed strange in the trading point. However, it wasn't like they hadn't seen stranger things before. The reason why they looked over there curiously was because the people in the trading point knew Xiaofan. A person brought by Xiaofan and dressed so mysteriously, so everyone was wondering who that person was. EC was busy with the things at hand. He had 2 accounts books in his hands, both of which belonged to the Yanjiao people. One was a tally of the things that travelers paid when they entered the Flaming River trading point in the past 30 days. The other was a tally of the rent. Some of the smaller tribes nearby had already set up shop here and would pay rent every 30 days. Beside EC, the half-beast slave, Grasshopper, was dozing off on a low stone bench. Suddenly, Grasshopper woke up with a start. The thorns on his back stood up and he looked around nervously. Then, he looked in a certain direction. Sensing Grasshopper's change, EC stopped what he was doing and frowned. He was wondering what had happened. Not long after, EC saw Xiaofan bring in a person wearing a sackcloth cloak. "Are you busy?" Xiaofan asked. "Not really, it's just some small things." EC looked at the cloaked person beside Xiaofan. He was even more curious because Grasshopper was on full alert. If EC wasn't here, Grasshopper would have run away. This was his reaction to danger. "This is?" EC asked. Wuxia pulled back his hood, revealing his expressionless face. His red eyes looked at EC. "Wuxia from the Han tribe." Han tribe? EC had never heard of it before. After coming here, he had studied a lot about the tribes. He remembered all the small and remote tribes that were mentioned, but he had never heard of this Han tribe. Furthermore, this person was able to make Grasshopper react like this, so he was obviously very strong. His tribe shouldn't be too weak either. No one had even mentioned the Han tribe before. Wuxia left the tribe for a long time. He wanted to know more about the other side of the sea, so I brought him here. "You're more familiar with the situation there," Xiaofan said. Although Zheng Luo and the others also came from the other side of the sea, they lived far away from the city and lived in the forest. There were many things that they didn't know. Asking EC would be more comprehensive. EC didn't find this troublesome. He was also curious about this person called Wuxia. This person gave him a strange feeling. He didn't even feel his breathing from the moment he entered the room. If Wuxia stood there without moving, he would really look like a stone statue. EC was about to agree when he heard some movement from the window. "EC, I still can't accept this. Tell me about the Flaming River Castle." Wu He, who was climbing through the window, saw the situation in the room and his face turned pale. His whole body seemed to be embedded in the window. He froze there and didn't dare to go any closer. "Sorry, wrong door." As he spoke, Wu He turned to jump out of the window. However, Xiaofan grabbed him by the back of his shirt and dragged him back in like a chick. As for the other Chonglis behind Wu He, they immediately fled upon seeing Xiaofan, ignoring Wu He. It wasn't that they didn't care about Wu He's life. They had to protect themselves first and then wait for an opportunity to save him. If it were any other Yanjiao who caught Wu He, they wouldn't be so scared. They might have rushed over to save him on the spot. However, it was Xiaofan who dragged Wu He in. They still remembered that he was the one who slapped them down from the sky. They were instantly scared. "I didn't steal anything this time," Wu He quickly explained. He knew he couldn't escape from Xiaofan's grip, so he stopped struggling and tried to sound sincere. "I really didn't steal anything. I didn't ask you that. Why are you so guilty?" Xiaofan dragged Wu He into the room. "No. I'm not guilty. Definitely not," Wu He said. "Then what did you mean just now? Did you want to sneak into the Flaming River Castle at night?" Xiaofan asked. "No. Definitely not." "Really?" Wu He denied. Although he did have this intention, he still couldn't hold back his curiosity. He discussed it with his companions and decided to ask EC for his opinion. Who knew that he would be caught by Xiaofan the moment he arrived? He wouldn't admit it even if he was beaten to death. Although Xiaofan's tone was calm, he was still worried that Xiaoxian would turn hostile the next moment and kill him right here and now. After hearing Wu He's words, Xiaoxian only chuckled, "Huh." Wu He became even more nervous under Xiaoxian's stare. He didn't know what Xiaoxian was trying to do. Was he going to lock him up in the cave again? "You guys seem to have a lot of free time recently," Xiaoxian said slowly. "No, we're planning to leave today." Wu He was about to promise that they would leave the Flaming River trading point as soon as possible when Xiaoxian said, "I'm afraid you guys won't be able to leave." Wu He's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean?" Xiaoxian slapped Wu He's shoulder. "I have a mission for you." After being slapped by Xiaoxian, Wu He's legs turned to jelly and he almost knelt down. He was really afraid that Xiaoxian would kill him. After hearing Xiaoxian's words, he became alert again. "What?" Xiaoxian pointed at Ganxia. "Answer his question." "Huh?" Wu He turned to look at Ganxia, who was as invisible as a rock man. He was too focused on guarding against Xiaoxian just now and only noticed this person now. Who was this bald guy? He didn't look like someone easy to talk to. It was better to stay away from people like him. Wu He immediately categorized Ganxia as someone he should stay away from. The Chonglis were very observant in this aspect. However, looking at Xiaoxian, if he didn't agree to this mission, he might not be able to leave this place alive. "All right. Brother, what do you want to ask?" Ganxia retreated to a spot 3 steps away from Ganxia and Xiaoxian and asked carefully. "It's about the other side of the sea. For example, the origins of some of the gangs." "You can talk about the Chonglis too," Xiaoxian said. "Not the Chonglis. Can you talk about other people?" "Sure. Ganxia will ask if you have any questions." "Are you going to let me go after that?" "Sure." "Ah, that's easy. Come, let me explain." Wu He waved at Ganxia. He didn't even need to prepare before he started to blabber on and on about some of his old enemies as examples. However, Ganxia didn't care. He just wanted to know how those gangs were formed and how those people felt. "He's indeed more suitable to talk about this," EC smiled, but there was no mirth in his eyes. He turned to Xiaoxian and asked, "Did you bring him back from the desert?" EC had always wanted to know more about the desert. Unfortunately, he didn't have a way to get information. Xiaoxian was also about to ask about Yi Xiang from the Yi family when a whistle sounded. It wasn't a sharp warning whistle. It was a reminder. Someone was coming to the Yanjiao tribe. "Let's talk about this next time." "I'll go take a look." Xiaoxian turned to Ganxia and said, "You stay here." Ganxia nodded. After Xiaoxian left, Wu He couldn't stay any longer. He wanted to go out and see what was going on. Since Xiaoxian wasn't here, the biggest threat was gone. He was emboldened again. Unfortunately, just as Wu He was about to leave, Ganxia grabbed his arm. "Ouch, ouch, ouch. Be gentle. Let's talk nicely. Don't hit me." Wu He retracted his foot. He was about to scold Ganxia when he saw Ganxia's bloodshot eyes. Suddenly, he felt a gust of cold wind behind him. On the other side, Xiaoxian arrived at the Flaming River Castle. Zheng Luo and Duo Kong were standing on top of the Flaming River Tower, looking into the distance with their binoculars. "What happened?" Xiaoxian asked. "I can't see clearly, but it looks like someone is coming," Zheng Luo said as he looked into the sky. A white figure was flying towards them at lightning speed. It was Gigu's white falcon. The bird was holding a piece of cloth in its claws. There were words on the cloth. Xiaoxian opened it and said to Zheng Luo, "I'll go back to the headquarters first. Keep an eye on Ganxia." "Go on." Zheng Luo also saw the words on the cloth. People from the D Mountain tribe were here. Chapter 762. Near the drumming tribe, crocodiles were sunbathing on the shore. Sensing something, the crocodiles that were floating on the surface of the water either dove back down or came ashore. Then, they stared at the surface of the river with emotionless eyes. The flaming river was the widest river on the mainland. At this moment, there were a few long bamboo rafts on the surface of the river. Strangely, there were only 2 people standing on the rafts. The rest of the rafts were filled with large shells of different shapes. Regardless of their appearance, the beautiful patterns on the shells were something no one had ever seen in the flaming river region. Even the drumming tribesmen, who often went into the water, had never seen such shells before. "Who are those people?" A drumming woman who was washing clothes by the river asked the person beside her. "I don't know. Are they from downstream? Their target is the Yanjiao tribe." Another person patted the agitated crocodile and looked at the river cautiously. "Those people are not normal. There are still people in the river." The drumming tribesmen who were good swimmers could see that there were still many people in the river, but they were all surrounding the rafts. The rafts were close to the other side of the river, so they couldn't see them clearly. Soon, they saw the Yanjiao people guarding the river walk over. At that moment, several figures shot out of the water, leaving trails of white water behind them. "Ancestor!" Someone exclaimed. "What was that just now? Was that a fish?" No, it was a human." The drumming tribesmen who saw the situation on the other side of the river took a deep breath. They couldn't care less about comforting the agitated crocodiles anymore. They rubbed their eyes and turned to look at the others. "Did I see wrongly just now? Why did I feel like it was a fish that came out of the water? But when I looked again, all I saw was a human standing on the shore." "Me too, I saw that too. The figures that jumped out of the water did look like fish. They couldn't see clearly what it was, but they could see the shape of a fish's tail. However, when those figures came ashore, they saw a human standing there. This made them very confused." At the same time, on the other side of the river, the Yanjiao tribesmen were shocked and they saw the D tribesmen come ashore. However, they had seen a D child with a human head and a fish body before, so they quickly calmed down. This time, the little girl Dian Dian was not among the people who came, but the person leading the team was still He Bian. Other than him, there were a few familiar faces, but the rest were unfamiliar faces. By the time Xiao Xian arrived, the D mountain tribesmen had already been invited up the mountain. The large shells they brought were all moved into the house. Seeing Xiao Xian, He Bian, who was talking to Gigu, quickly stood up with a grateful smile on his face. "Elder Xiao Xian." Xiao Xian looked at He Bian and the other D mountain tribesmen in surprise. Their auras were different from the last time he saw them. They seemed stronger and stronger. Last time, when He Bian brought the seriously ill Dian Dian here, He Bian and the others were sick as well. It was just that their illness wasn't obvious. Now, they were all cured. The reason they fell sick was because their fire seed had been swallowed. Now that they were all cured, it meant that their battle to protect their fire seed was a success. "Congratulations," Xiao Xian said. "I still have to thank you, head elder," He Bian said seriously. As he spoke, he also asked the other D mountain tribesmen to thank Xiao Xian. Xiao Xian looked around and asked, "Where's Dian Dian?" "She's already a shaman of the D mountain tribe. Our tribe just finished a bloody battle, and there are many things that need to be done. She has to stay in the tribe." He Bian told Xiao Xian everything that had happened after they returned to the D mountain tribe. Gigu pursed his lips. When He Bian was talking to him just now, he didn't even tell him so much. He was even a little perfunctory. Now, he was telling Xiao Xian everything. He even told Xiao Xian about the changes in the D mountain tribe's fire seed. What happened to, "It's inconvenient to talk about the fire seed"? Did he take that as a fart? However, Gigu knew what the D Mountain tribesmen were thinking. They valued shamans more. In their eyes, Xiaoxian was the same as their shaman. As for chiefs and leaders, they were all secondary. After all, the shaman was in charge of the D Mountain tribe. In addition, Xiaoxian had helped them a lot. Instead of saying that the D Mountain tribe was giving gifts to the Yanjiao tribe to express their gratitude, it was more like they were giving these gifts to Xiaoxian. However, the changes in the D Mountain tribe were truly shocking. After they received advice from Xiaoxian on how to merge with the fire seed, they went back and swallowed the D fish's portion of the fire seed instead. Of course, things were much more complicated and cruel. They even had to change the deeply ingrained mindset of the D Mountain tribesmen. It wasn't an easy task. During a battle of life and death, people might be affected by the atmosphere. Their emotions would be stimulated, and they would charge forward. When the battle was over, some people would overthink things. No wonder He Bian said that Dian Dian was very busy. The shaman needed to stay in the tribe to calm the people down. He also needed to make arrangements after the battle. Xiaoxian listened to He Bian talk about the battle between the D Mountain tribe and the D fish as he observed the D Mountain tribesmen around him. When He Bian mentioned Dian Dian, these people's expressions turned respectful. They had heard that the previous shaman of the D tribe couldn't survive the war. It was only after Dian Dian took over that they managed to solve the fire seeds problem. Are all of you in the same situation as Dian Dian? Can you transform into a fish? Xiaoxian asked. This is actually the same as awakening your totemic power. If you can awaken your totemic power, you can transform into a fish. These two are tied together, He Bian explained. Xiaoxian understood what He Bian meant. The D Mountain tribe's fire seed had swallowed the D fish's fire seed. Now that the two had merged into one, when they used their totemic power, they triggered another type of power in the fire seed. How was the merging process? Xiaoxian asked again. Although it was very difficult, it was a success in the end. I thought it would take a long time and Dian Dian was prepared for a long battle. However, she didn't expect it to be resolved so quickly. He Bian glanced at Xiaoxian when he said this. Back when Dian Dian was in Yanjiao, her transformation only lasted for one night. The devouring of the fire seed was similar to the transformation in Dian Dian's body. After the fire seed was resolved, Dian Dian said that the reason she was able to let the fire seed devour so quickly was probably because of Xiaoxian. When he thought about this, He Bian looked at Xiaoxian with even more respect. Actually, different people have different degrees of fish transformation. The stronger they are, the greater the degree of fish transformation. He Bian transformed as he spoke. The patterns on his body looked like they were covered in fish scales. His arms swelled and his upper arms became more obvious. His fingers had long, sharp nails and webbed nails. As for his lower body, his legs, which were originally standing on the ground, had turned into a fish tail. His entire body looked thicker and longer. This time, He Bian and the rest of the tribe were wearing different clothes from the last time. It was much simpler and they wore fish skin skirts. The material was different from the ones Xiaoxian saw last time. There were large patches of fish scales on the skirt, and some parts of the skirt even had dark brown scales. This time, most of the D Mountain tribesmen were wearing this kind of fish skin. What is this fish skin? Xiaoxian asked. The D fish skin. It was obvious how much the D Mountain tribesmen hated the D fish. However, the D fish skin was indeed more suitable for the D Mountain tribesmen. It was more flexible and more suitable for swimming in water. He Bian told Xiaoxian about the gifts they brought this time. When they left last time, they promised that they would send gifts as soon as the matter was resolved. The D Mountain tribesmen rarely used wooden boxes. They preferred to use natural materials. After some processing, they could turn them into suitable tools. For example, the big shells that were used as shipping boxes this time. There were 10 big shells. 3 of them contained pearls and other gemstones, 3 of them contained seashells, and 4 of them contained food. Salted fish? Xiaofan looked at the dried fish in the shells. He picked one up and looked at it. These are not big fish. We usually eat them, so we brought the ones that we think are tasty. He Bien scratched his head. We wanted to bring some big sea beasts, but it's too far away. It's not easy to deliver them. If you come to the D Mountain tribe, we'll catch as many as you eat. Xiaofan didn't mind the size of these fish. Sea fish were good too. The people here mostly ate freshwater fish. Many of them had never eaten sea fish before. Oh right, there's one more thing. He Bien became serious. When we came here, we saw some strange people. We didn't understand what they were saying. They wanted to steal our things, so we killed them. He Bien took out a small golden plate. There were words engraved on it, but he didn't recognize the words. Xiaofan took the plate. He Bien didn't recognize the words, but he did. They were words from the other side of the sea. Many people had already come to the Flaming River area. Chapter 763. Last time, when He Bien brought Jian up the Flaming River to search for a cure, he had suffered because of his lack of experience. This time, when he brought Jian up the Flaming River again, he learned to be smarter. He was even more vigilant of the people and things around him. Anyone who tried to get close to them, no matter who they were, would be killed. The D Mountain tribesmen might seem friendly in Yanjiao, and He Bien always had a smile on his face, but anyone with sharp senses could sense the murderous aura emanating from them. It wasn't directed at Yanjiao, it was just that they couldn't hide their murderous aura. Then, they looked at the wooden raft with the large shells. There were many bloodstains on it that hadn't been washed away by the river. Some belonged to them, and some belonged to the people and beasts they met along the way. Plus, the D Mountain tribesmen had just gone through a battle of life and death. They were at their peak, and they would kill anyone who dared to mess with them. He Bien didn't hide anything from Xiaofan about the suspicious people they met along the way. After all, the D Mountain tribe lived far away, and outsiders rarely came here. However, it was different here in Yanjiao. If these people were really from the other side of the sea, they might be a threat to Yanjiao. It was better to be on guard against them. Ah, I almost forgot. He Bien came to the 3 large shells with all kinds of seashells, but these weren't what He Bien was looking for. He looked at the 3 large shells and opened one of them. Among the many smaller shells, there was a slightly larger shell that was about the length of an arm. This shell looked like 2 hands with their fingers crossed. The cracks were stuffed with something and water was seeping out. After He Bien carried it out, he used the sharp corner stone in his hand to skillfully pry at a few places. Then, with a little force, the shell was pried open. Inside, there were many small fishes with their bellies turned up. Xiaofan pointed at the dead fishes and looked at He Bien in confusion. Dead fishes? No, these people aren't dead. They've just been fed medicine. It's like they're dead, He Bien said. When they were still in the D Mountain tribe, they would sometimes catch a lot of fish, but they couldn't kill them all at once. Some people didn't like to eat dried fish, so the D Mountain tribesmen found a medicine that could make the fish fall into a deep sleep after eating it. This way, the fish would stay fresh for a long time. When the D Mountain tribesmen wanted to eat them, they would take the fish out of the medicated water and put them back into normal water. After a while, the fish would wake up again. He Bien got someone to fill a bucket with river water and put the 20 small fish into the bucket. The water in the shells had been sprinkled with medicine. As long as the fish were removed from the water, they would wake up again. However, if they don't wake up in 3 days, they might never wake up again. However, from the looks of it, they will definitely wake up within 3 days, He Bian said. If it had really been killed by the potion, the fish would not have remained in this state. They often came into contact with fish, so of course they would know if the fish's body was normal. This is a gift from the shamaness. The last time she came here, she saw your lake and heard that you raised fish, so she caught some fresh ones. Oh, she also made some dried fish and put them in the shells. He Bian put the 20 small fishes into the bucket and shook them one by one to confirm that there was really no problem. What kind of fish are these? Xiaofan looked at them. These small, spindle-shaped fishes were only about the length of a palm. Their heads and backs were greenish-black, but they were darker in color. He couldn't tell what they were from their appearance. There were fishes that looked similar to them in the flaming river. They're cloaked turtles. Because when they grow up, they look like they're wearing hard armor. Don't be fooled by how small they are now. When they're just born, they're not even as big as my fingernail. However, when they grow up, they're bigger than your house. Cloaked turtles are one of them. Also, cloaked turtles are enemies with the D fish in the sea. When they meet, they will fight to the death. In the past, we helped the D fish fight against the cloaked turtles. We also often go to the river to catch their young fish to eat because the cloaked turtles will go upstream to give birth. However, after giving birth, they will return to the sea. These small fishes grew up in the river, so I'm sure you can raise them here too. He Bian told Xiaofan everything he knew. Actually, they didn't know much about the habits of the armored turtles, but they used to be on the same side as the D fish. They were also enemies of the armored turtles, so they often observed their movements. What do they eat? Xiaofan asked. They eat, He Bian was stunned. They only knew that Yanjiao raised fish and other animals, but they didn't have any experience in this area. If they were hungry, they could just go fishing. There was no need to raise them. When Xiaofan asked this question, He Bian stuttered. Just put them in the water. They'll grow, right? Seeing He Bian like this, Xiaofan knew he couldn't get an answer from him. Sigh, they'll eat themselves in the water. When they're bigger, you can eat them. They grow really fast. He Bian felt that Dian was really smart. They didn't bring any large sea beasts here, but they brought these small fishes. The Yanjiao knew how to raise them. As long as they grew up, wouldn't they be as big as large sea beasts? Xiaofan was speechless as he looked at He Bian, who was inexplicably proud of himself. If it was that easy to raise animals, it wouldn't have become a skill valued by the tribesmen. After delivering all the gifts, they followed Xiaofan to the flaming river castle. The next day, He Bian left with his men. They were worried that something might have happened to their tribe. After all, the war had just ended. As for the flaming river castle, although they were surprised, they still preferred a quiet place with fewer strangers. The D fish didn't disappear. After they lost their fire seed, many of them escaped. Now, we D mountain tribesmen kill every D fish we see, He Bian told Xiaofan before they left. After they returned, the D mountain tribe would truly start a new life. They just didn't know what the future held. Under He Bian's command, the 50 or so people jumped into the river. When their heads popped out again, they had totemic tattoos on their faces. They waved their thick, scaly arms at Xiaofan and the others before diving back into the water. Under the river, dozens of water arrows shot downstream. They were much faster than boats. No wonder He Bian and the others didn't take too long to swim back. The bamboo rafts were pulled by humans. They thought that using wooden oars was too slow, so they unloaded the rafts on their way back. They didn't need to pull the rafts, so the rafts could move even faster. Xiaofan returned to the mountain and moved the pearls and shells to Guizai's place. The other 4 shells and salted fishes were moved to Gigu's place for him to distribute the food. These were seafood. Many people in the tribe hadn't eaten them before. It didn't matter if they were used to the taste, they still wanted to try it. As for the armored fishes that He Bian brought over from afar, Xiaoxian thought about it and decided to dump them all into the new man-made river around the trading point. Because the Flaming River Bridge was directly across the Flaming River, it was more troublesome for ships to travel up and down the river. Hence, under Xiaoxian's suggestion, the Yan Jiao dug an arc-shaped man-made river channel around the Flaming River Castle and the planned expansion site. The two intersections of the river channel and the Flaming River were blocked with gates. This prevented dangerous fishes like piranhas from entering the river. Now, there were only some small aquatic animals that weren't a threat. Since Xiaoxian didn't know how to raise these armored fishes, he decided to dump them into the river. They didn't dump them in the man-made lake at the headquarters because it was the green duck's territory. Xiaoxian was worried that these armored fishes would be eaten by the green ducks before they could grow up. Even if the green ducks didn't touch them, Xiaoxian was still worried that these armored fishes would threaten the other fishes in the lake. After all, a fish that could fight against the D-fish definitely wasn't an ordinary fish. The 20 armored fishes in the bucket all woke up the day after He Bian and the others left. They didn't look very energetic, probably because the effects of the medicine hadn't worn off yet. Xiaoxian waited for a day. When he saw that their fins were moving more vigorously, he carried the bucket and walked over to the other side of the river. The pterosaur followed Xiaoxian, but the withered leaf birds didn't cross the bridge. Their range of activity was limited to the headquarters. They would be afraid if they left this area. There were too many unfamiliar scents on the other side of the river. After following them for a while, they returned to the headquarters and stood on the branches, chirping cha-cha. Unfortunately, the pterosaur ignored them and continued to follow Xiaoxian across the bridge. "Don't eat these fishes. If I find out that you're secretly eating fish, I'll feed you to Caesar," Xiaoxian warned. It wasn't clear if the pterosaur understood, but it looked into the big bucket Xiaoxian was carrying, chirped, and continued to follow. Xiaoxian ignored it and continued to walk towards the man-made river. The Yanjiao soldiers guarding the bridge were also curious. They watched as the Great Elder carried the bucket and walked towards the river. When he reached the river, he poured the contents of the bucket into the river. "Great Elder, what are you pouring?" someone asked. "Fish. Be careful. Don't let anyone fish in the river," Xiaoxian said. The soldiers nodded. They would definitely keep their eyes open and keep an eye out. The 20 armored fishes were poured into the river and quickly disappeared. The speed at which they swam was completely different from when they were in the bucket. The sluice gate might not be able to stop these small fishes. Perhaps they could find a gap and swim out. After all, they were still small. However, Xiaoxian couldn't care less. He didn't care if these small fishes could really grow up. Thinking about Gan Xia and Wu He, whom he had left at Yixi's place yesterday, Xiaoxian carried the empty bucket and walked towards the trading point. After Xiaoxian left, the pterosaur spread its wings and glided to the side of the river. It stared at the water for a while, then let out a series of strange chirps. This was clearly different from its usual chirps. Every time it chirped, it would make a series of chirps. The last chirp was especially long. After a while, it didn't see any reaction from the river. Instead, it called the soldiers guarding the bridge over. "Don't eat the fishes in there. The Great Elder will be angry." The soldier waved a spear in his hand, trying to scare the pterosaur away. The pterosaur, who was standing at the other end of the river, saw that someone was coming. It flapped its wings and flew to a nearby tree. It looked at the river again and chirped a few more times. A greenish-black figure swayed on the surface of the water, then dove back into the water. Seeing this, the pterosaur flapped its wings and flew away. The soldiers at the other end of the river saw that the pterosaur was finally chased away and went back to guarding the bridge. Not long after, the pterosaur flew back with a fish in its mouth. It had caught it from the flaming river. The soldiers at the bridge watched as the pterosaur tore off the fish and threw it into the water. After a few times, it would chirp again. "What is it doing?" the soldier at the bridge asked his comrade. "Feeding fish to fish," the other guessed. "Are we going to do something about it?" "Let's not, right? It didn't eat the fish in there either. When the time comes, we'll just have to inform the Grand Elder and see what he decides." "That works too. As long as the pterosaur didn't eat the fish in the river, they wouldn't chase it away for now." At the same time, there was only one fish swimming in the man-made river. Soon, a second and third fish appeared. Not long after, there were more than 10 fish swimming in the river. After tearing the fish into pieces, the pterosaur threw the carcass into the river and flew back to the Flaming Horn headquarters without a care. There were too many unfamiliar auras here. It felt safer to stay in the headquarters. In the trading zone. When Xiaofan arrived at EC's place, EC was writing something. When he saw Xiaofan, he didn't stop writing. He just glanced at him and continued writing. Grasshopper was still curled up beside EC. Although there were fewer spines on his back, they weren't completely gone. This proved that he was still very nervous. Wu He and Xiaofan were where they were when Xiaofan left yesterday. They were still where they were now. The only difference was that Wu He was standing up yesterday. Now, he was sitting listlessly on a wooden stool. Even his voice was weak. As for Wuxia, he was exactly the same as yesterday. When he saw Xiaofan come in, Wu He was instantly energized. He said to Xiaofan, "Hurry up and take this person away. I will leave immediately. Really, I will never come to Yanjiao again." Yesterday, Xiaofan said that Wu He could leave after answering Wuxia's questions. However, Wu He didn't expect Wuxia to ask him one question after another. He didn't expect Wuxia to ask him one question after another. This guy doesn't sleep either. To Wu He, it wasn't a problem for him to not sleep for a night. However, he didn't want to face this stone face all the time. If he didn't answer, Wuxia would use force to threaten him. His arm was almost broken. "How's it going?" Xiaofan looked at Wuxia. Wuxia loosened his grip on Wu He's arm and shook his head lightly. He wasn't satisfied with Wu He's answers. At first, it was okay, but later on, it was full of lies. "I'm going to the Flaming River Castle. What are your plans?" Xiaofan asked. "Let's go back." Wuxia stood up and put on his hood. He followed Xiaofan out the door. After he left, he glanced at Grasshopper. Grasshopper was so scared that all the thorns on its back popped out again. Wuxia was just curious. He heard from Wu He that Grasshopper was a slave. A slave with both human and beast blood. Interesting. Half beastman, slave master, slave. It was completely different from the relationship between humans in the tribe. Wuxia learned a lot from Wu He. After he returned to the Flaming River Castle, he went straight to the basement to lie in his coffin and think about life. Xiaofan went to look for Zhengluo. "What's wrong? Is there a problem?" Xiaofan saw Zhengluo and Duo Kang's serious faces. Zhengluo passed the animal skin scroll to Xiaofan. "Take a look and you'll know." Xiaofan took the animal skin scroll. The first thing he saw was the totemic patterns on it. This would let him know who sent it. The Lu tribe? Chapter 764. Now Yanjiao rarely contacted the Lu tribe. One reason was that it was too far away, and the other reason was that there was no need to contact them. The Yanjiao tribe had enough animals to raise. Most of them hunted in the forest, so they didn't need to trade with the Lu tribe. The Lu tribe didn't contact Yanjiao either. Xiaofan knew that the Lu tribe didn't like fighting. They had always been good people, and several large tribes in the central region had always protected them, probably in case they needed the Lu tribe's help in times of shortage of food during a disaster. After the last disaster, the Lu tribe provided them with a lot of food. Although they rarely contacted each other, Xiaofan had heard about the Lu tribe from the Longboat tribe and Feather tribe. It was said that the Lu tribe had a lot of complaints about Yanjiao. Why? It had to be related to the fire seed. The Lu tribe was probably one of the few large tribes that didn't want to merge their fire seed. Their main means of livelihood now was raising livestock, and they rarely had conflicts with other tribes. In the past, they had endured the provocations of the Wanshi tribe time and time again. To put it bluntly, they were cowards, but it was also a conservative and effective way. They knew how to survive stably. But now, Yanjiao changed everything. The merging of fire seeds came from the Flaming Horn tribe. First, the major tribes merged their fire seeds, then the other tribes in the central region merged their fire seeds. Either voluntarily or under coercion, they all merged their fire seeds one by one. All of them set their sights on a new goal, breaking the current situation. When the Lu tribe was in trouble, no one could help them effectively. The Mang tribe and Eight Limbs tribe were cooperating with the Longboat tribe. The Longboat tribe took some of them out to sea, and the rest helped to look after the Longboat tribe, in case someone attacked the Longboat tribe's nest while the fleet was away. The Longboat tribe hadn't finished migrating yet, but they would definitely move to the estuary in the future. Their hearts had already flown out, and they didn't want to be trapped inland. Their goal was the sea. As for the Lu tribe, the three of them didn't have time to care about them. They could only help a little, but they wouldn't help them all the time. The Feather tribe reared birds and brought back a large number of birds from the forest. They were also very busy. The place where the Feather tribe was located was easy to defend and hard to attack. Outsiders who weren't familiar with the terrain would find it hard to cause trouble for the Feather tribe. Now, the Feather tribesmen only wanted to manage their own territory. They didn't care about anything else, so the help they could provide was limited. It was said that the Thousand Masks tribe wanted to learn from Yanjiao and build a city. They also had to guard against external threats. They were also very busy and had no time to care about the Lu tribe's crisis. As for the tribes on the grasslands, they wouldn't care about the Lu tribe. They didn't have much interaction with the Lu tribe in the past. After much consideration, the Lu tribe could only ask Yanjiao for help. The Lu tribe's situation might be worse than what's written, said Zheng Luo. It was only written on the animal skin scroll that the Lu tribe's beasts were being snatched away by outsiders, but since the Lu tribe was forced to seek help from Yanjiao, which was so far away, it was clear that the situation was critical. It also says that they want to move their tribe. Zheng Luo gestured for Xiaofan to focus on the last few sentences. According to what was written, the Lu tribe wasn't sure if they really wanted to move. They just wanted to move. They're really simple-minded. Duo Kong was very dissatisfied. He was actually willing to let the Lu tribe come over. After all, the Lu tribe was good at rearing beasts. They might be able to raise more beasts. Yanjiao wouldn't mind having too many beasts. But the Lu tribe had a primitive fire seed. They wanted to bring it over? No way. Yanjiao wouldn't want to see this happen. After all, it wasn't their own fire seed. Even if it was a distance away, it would still affect their totemic warriors. Didn't they see that the tribes near Yanjiao all had merged fire seeds? Rain tribe, Drumming tribe, Taiha tribe, which one of them didn't have a merged fire seed? If the Lu tribe wanted to move over and rely on Yanjiao, that was fine. But first, they had to get rid of their primitive fire seed. Otherwise, if they brought it over, not only the Yanjiao people, but also the other tribes around them wouldn't be happy. They didn't choose to merge their fire seed. Until now, it seems like only the Lu tribe hasn't merged their fire seed, said Zheng Luo. Xiaoxian had already finished reading the words on the animal skin scroll. Today, the Lu tribe is like a chicken standing there, waiting for people to snatch it. It's a good thing they didn't merge their fire seed. If they did, all the beasts in their animal pens would have been snatched away and their people would be killed. What do you plan to do? Zheng Luo asked Xiaoxian. Let's not talk about whether they'll move or not. The Lu tribe has already listed their rewards to Yanjiao. As long as Yanjiao helps them, they'll give everything to Yanjiao. Thinking about the number of beasts listed in the scroll, Duo Kong sighed. They're really generous. The Lu tribe's rewards were already close to 2/3 of their total beasts. Maybe the Lu tribe wants to use this opportunity to get rid of the excess beasts. That'll make it easier for them to move, guessed Zheng Luo. Xiaoxian thought for a moment. I'll bring people over to take a look. Not for their rewards, but for the others. You want to use this to establish your authority? Zheng Luo immediately thought of this. I heard that people from the other side of the sea have appeared in the Flaming River area. We can use this as a warning. It's not just people from the other side of the sea. There aren't many people who can safely cross the sea. Only a limited number of people have their eyes on the Lu tribe. Other than the outsiders, most of them are tribesmen who have already started to change, Xiaoxian said in a low voice. Tribesmen? After merging their fire seeds, their ambitions are magnified and they're no longer content with their lot. They don't have to stay in one place, so naturally, they'll set their sights on other places, Xiaoxian said. After all, most of the people living on this land are tribesmen. You mean, other than scaring the outsiders, we have to do something to show the tribesmen who have other intentions? Zheng Luo understood. Sometimes, being infamous isn't a bad thing. Back then, Yanjiao's ancestors made a wise choice by making themselves infamous. Xiaoxian thought about the other tribe's impression of the Yanjiao people. Although the Yanjiao tribe was famous now, they weren't fierce enough. In such a big environment, their fierce reputation was a very good shield. At least it could deter those who had bad intentions from targeting the Flaming Horn tribe. Xiaoxian, when are you leaving? I'll go with you. Duo Kong rubbed his hands. He was already itching to go. You can't leave, Xiaoxian refused. What? Why can't I? Last time, Ta went with you to the desert. This time, you're going to the Lu tribe to rescue them. It's my turn now. Duo Kong remembered this clearly. Between him and Ta, one of them had to stay in the tribe. You have to help Zheng Luo keep an eye on the trading point. There are already people from other tribes nearby. Some of them are mixed in with the travel team. They're probably investigating the trading point, Xiaoxian said. Hearing this, Duo Kong didn't insist. Compared to the Lu tribe, the trading point was more important. Xiaoxian, are you bringing the guy in the basement with you? Duo Kong asked. If I don't bring him out, I won't feel safe leaving him here, Xiaoxian said. Ganxia's situation was too special. If he suddenly went berserk, he could cause a mess in the Flaming River Castle. It was better to bring him out. Duo Kong thought about it and agreed. Only Xiaoxian could kill those puppets in the desert. Although Ganxia was different from those slave puppets, in some ways, at least he was revived because of Xiaoxian. Maybe if something happened, Xiaoxian would be able to think of a way to deal with it. It's good to bring him out, but Xiaoxian, have you noticed that he's getting more and more dumb? Duo Kong lowered his voice and said. Ganxia's mood swings were already very low. He could maintain the same expression for the whole day. Duo Kong was curious. How could a person maintain the same expression all the time? Didn't he feel uncomfortable? They didn't stay in the Flaming River Castle any longer. Since they had decided to bring people to the Lu tribe, Xiaoxian had to inform the people at the headquarters and select some people to bring out. After exiting the trading point, Xiaofan didn't cross the bridge directly. Instead, he walked further away. There was a suspension bridge over the man-made river. Xiaofan continued walking from the bridge until he reached an inconspicuous place. There was no one else around. Xiaofan looked around and walked to a spot. He lifted his foot and stomped twice. Not long after, the spot where Xiaofan was standing was lifted up. A short and fat man with a full beard poked his head out. He was probably sleeping just now because his eyes were narrowed even smaller than usual. He looked out and yawned. This was a tribesman. When he saw Xiaofan, he immediately became attentive. "Grand Elder, is there anything I can help you with? Tell the others to be on the lookout for outsiders." Xiaofan left him with this sentence. The tribesman nodded profusely. He would definitely pass on this message, and he would do so as soon as possible. Xiaofan's words meant that there were dangerous people coming from further away. Not only the other tribes living in the Flaming River region, but even the tribesmen had to be on guard. After reminding the tribesmen, Xiaofan walked back. He sensed that the pterosaur was moving around where he poured the fish. When he walked over, he saw the pterosaur tearing apart a piranha fish and throwing its flesh into the river. It screamed as it did so. The guards around the stone bridge told Xiaofan that the pterosaur had done this once before. This was the second time. Xiaofan also saw more than 10 spindle-shaped figures swimming on the river's surface. They seemed to be fighting for food. Those were the fish he poured into the river. "Grand Elder, should we stop it in the future?" the guard asked. "No need. Just keep an eye on it." Xiaofan didn't know why the pterosaur was doing this, but from the looks of it, the fish wouldn't starve to death with the pterosaur's food. After returning to the tribe, Xiaofan had a discussion with the chief and shaman. The next day, Xiaofan brought 500 people out. Wuxia, who was wearing a hood and a cloak, also left with Xiaofan. Just like what Xiaofan said, he could go out and observe the changes in this world. He could also interact with more people from the other side of the sea. He could also ask more questions. After Xiaofan left with his people, some people also left the Flaming River trading point, such as Wuxia and the others from the Changla tribe. Wuxia wanted to leave to play somewhere else, but he saw Xiaofan leaving with his people. 500 people was already a big commotion in most places where there weren't many people. It was obvious that something had happened. The Changla tribe's curiosity was piqued again. Wuxia and the others left the trading point and followed Xiaofan's group. They wanted to see what was going on at the Lu tribe's place. Ever since Yinjiao migrated, the Lu tribe's place had become much more deserted. Strictly speaking, they couldn't be considered part of the central region. They were more towards the side because they needed a large amount of land to rear all kinds of animals. The competition for territory in the central region was too fierce. If one wasn't careful, they could start a war. The Lu tribe had lived here for a long time. As traditional tribesmen, they wouldn't want to leave if they had a choice. But now, the situation had changed and they had become a target for many people. In the second year of the disaster, their animal pens started to lose their animals. At first, it was just the pens at the edge of the region. Later, more and more animals went missing. Even the people guarding the pen started to get injured. Now, the situation was getting worse. They were still thankful that they had a fire seed to scare off those thieves. But this didn't solve the problem. Now, their animal pens were still being lost and their casualties were increasing. Some people even began to worry. What would they do if those people gathered together to attack the fire seed of their tribe? Their fire seed was still a primitive fire seed. If their fire seed was gone, their tribe would be gone too. There were 3 choices. The first was to go to the grasslands. There were many animal-rearing tribes on the grasslands. There was also plenty of grass and water. But the good spots on the grasslands were already occupied. If they went there, they would have to fight with the tribes there for territory. The Lu tribe didn't want to go to war. They really didn't want to go to war because their tribe's population was decreasing due to external threats. War would reduce their population even more. They didn't want to go to war. The second choice was to go to the Thousand Masks tribe. The Thousand Masks tribe also knew about the Lu tribe's current situation, but they didn't help them. Instead, they watched coldly from the sidelines for a while and made a request. They were willing to accept the Lu tribe, but the Lu tribe had to merge with their fire seed. Other than that, there were other conditions, such as the distribution of animals in the pens. No matter what the conditions were, the Lu tribe couldn't agree immediately. The third choice was to go to the Yanjiao tribe. I still agree to go to Yanjiao. Yanjiao looked at the others present and said. He had interacted with Yanjiao many times. Compared to the Thousand Masks tribe, he trusted the Yanjiao people more. If we must merge with our fire seed, Yanjiao is definitely better than the Thousand Masks tribe, Yanjiao said with certainty. If Yanjiao can accept us bringing our fire seed over, it's not impossible to choose them, an old man said. But the others didn't agree, including Yanjiao. Don't even think about it. The Yanjiao people won't allow it. Do you know why the big tribes in the central region all let the other tribes merge their fire seeds? Because the fire seed makes them unhappy. Yanjiao sneered. Under the influence of the successive events in the tribe, he no longer cared about what he said. Even if the other party was an elder, he still had to wake them up when they said such childish thoughts. They couldn't see the situation clearly and dilly-dallied until now. As a result, the tribe's situation was getting more and more difficult. Even if they wanted to merge their fire seed, they didn't dare because there were too many people spying on them. Who knew if they would sneak up on them at a critical moment? Yanjiao was the one who urged the new chief to write the letter asking for help from Yanjiao. Yes, the previous chief of the Lu tribe was killed in a battle with outsiders. Not long ago, the tribe elected a new chief. Baixing was the strongest person in the Lu tribe, or else they wouldn't have chosen him at a time like this. Although he was strong, his foresight wasn't as far-sighted as the previous chief. Fortunately, he listened to Yanjiao's advice and wrote a letter asking for help from Yanjiao. Looking at the silent others in the tribe, Yanjiao was so angry that his head hurt. He walked away. You guys keep talking. Call me when you have a result. Walking out of the chief's house, Yanjiao looked at the people walking around outside. Their eyes were blank, and they looked absent-minded. Be alert. Yanjiao shouted. The people who were thinking about something were startled by Yanjiao's words. They looked around nervously, and when they found nothing unusual, they took a deep breath. In fact, they weren't so timid before, but a series of events, especially the death of the previous chief, had greatly damaged their confidence. Yanjiao looked at the state of those people and took a deep breath. He wanted to scold them, but after opening his mouth, he sighed and left. When they were facing the Wuxia tribe, they were able to live peacefully because they had the support of several other tribes in the central region. The Wuxia tribe didn't dare to do anything to them. But now the situation was different. Running away would not solve the problem. Those people were outsiders. Perhaps there were other people from other tribes who wanted to take advantage of the situation. But in Yanjiao's eyes, they were all predators. And the Lu tribe was like a stupid bird that was being raised. Facing threats from all sides, they still imagined that they could continue to live a peaceful life. No wonder the Yanjiao called their birds stupid birds. They were fat, but they didn't have strength or brains. Who was to blame for their current situation? The rule of survival in the forest was to catch the weak and stupid ones. Boss. A young warrior ran over from the animal pen, panting heavily. He looked angry. Boss, another stupid bird is missing. Now they also learned from the Yanjiao people to call their birds stupid birds, because Yanjiao also thought they were too stupid, so stupid that it annoyed him. Taken away again? Yanjiao felt tired in his heart. There were a lot of beasts in the animal pen. Although there were guards around, there were always loopholes. The people who were wandering around the Lu tribe would take advantage of these loopholes and destroy the animal pen. Then, they would use food to lure the beasts away. Among them, most of them were stupid birds. Judging from the marks on the edge of the animal pen, yes. The young man who came over was angry and helpless. How can they be so stupid? So stupid. Stupid. Yanjiao wanted to cut open the heads of those stupid birds to find out what was wrong with them. How could they be taken away by a fruit? The ancestors of the tribe trained these birds from their wild state to birds suitable for breeding. But in terms of breeding, it was indeed successful. Yanjiao used to think so too, but now, every time he heard that a stupid bird was taken away so easily, he only felt a sense of helplessness. If these birds were a little smarter, they wouldn't have been taken away so quickly. But things in the world were like this. Since they chose these stupid birds to be domesticated, they couldn't be blamed for being so easily fooled. Not thinking about that, Yanjiao asked again, "Did anyone get hurt?" "No." "That's good. As for those stupid birds, let's just let them be." At the same time, not far from the Lu tribe, somewhere in the forest, about 20 people gathered together in a circle. In the middle of the circle was a bonfire. Inside the bonfire was the stupid bird that was just taken from the Lu tribe. These people laughed, and the language they spoke was not the common language of the tribe. Chapter 765. Yanjiao walked around the animal pens. The guards didn't seem to be in a good state. Some of them were distracted while others were overly nervous. They lost a stupid bird today, so it was a good thing that no one was injured. Many times before, when they discovered thieves, the guards would fight with them. Casualties were inevitable. Of course, in order to prevent the animals in the animal pens from being stolen, these casualties were unavoidable. However, some people were still worried because they didn't know how long this situation would last. Humans would get tired eventually. They were in the open while the thieves were in the dark. The situation wasn't good for them. Yanjiao pondered. He had already sent out the letter asking for help a long time ago. He didn't know if the Yanjiao people would come. Just as he was thinking, someone rushed over. "Boss! Someone's here." Yanjiao was overjoyed when he heard this. He jumped up and asked anxiously, "Are they Yanjiao people?" "No, they're from the Thousand Masks tribe." Yanjiao's excitement faded when he heard that they were from the Thousand Masks tribe. He scratched his head with a conflicted expression. "Boss, aren't you going over?" "The chief and the others are all there," that person asked. "Why should I go? They won't listen even if I tell them." "No, I better go. I don't want them to be fooled by the Thousand Masks tribe." Yanjiao hurriedly left the animal pen. When Yanjiao went over, the current chief of the Lu tribe, Bai Xing, was already talking to the Thousand Masks tribe. However, the atmosphere wasn't good. The leader of the Thousand Masks tribe this time was Dianfa. Yanjiao had some understanding of Dianfa. Although Dianfa always had a smile on his face and seemed easy to talk to, he was actually a person who would change his expression at the slightest provocation. Now, the Lu tribesmen were really afraid to see him. Ever since they merged with their fire seed, the Thousand Masks tribe was no longer the same as before. No, it seemed that after merging with their fire seed, all the major tribes in the central region changed. At least, they didn't look like the Lu tribesmen. Yanjiao sighed and walked in. He heard Dianfa say that the Thousand Masks tribe wanted to take in the Lu tribe. If the Lu tribe agreed, they would leave a place for the Lu tribe to live in. However, the Lu tribe had to pay a price. They didn't ask the Lu tribe to hand over a certain number of animals to the Thousand Masks tribe every year. They only needed to hand over half of their animals. Hearing this, even the Lu tribesmen who had been silent couldn't sit still anymore. If they only gave the Thousand Masks 1/3, or even 2/3, they would be fine, as long as the Lu tribe could survive this crisis. If they gave away 2/3 of their beasts at once, they were confident that they would be able to increase their numbers quickly. However, if they had to give away half of their beasts every year, it would be difficult for the Lu tribesmen. "That's not what you said last time," an elder shouted loudly. Because he was too excited, his voice was a bit strange and sharp, sounding ear-piercing. The last time Jian came to talk to the Lu tribe, he said that the Lu tribe only needed to give the Thousand Masks 1/3 of the beasts they raised every year. Unfortunately, the Lu tribe wasn't willing back then, but now they were asking for more. Jian smiled and glanced at the old man. When their eyes met, the old man subconsciously shrank back. "Last time, our chief only asked for a small amount because our two tribes are familiar with each other. Who knew that you wouldn't even agree to such a small amount of things? This time, our leader is angry, so he added another request," Jian explained calmly. But you're asking for too much. This is considered a lot. Why didn't you agree last time? Now that the situation has changed, you should know that it's impossible for things to be the same as before. You can either become independent or join a stronger tribe. Otherwise, you won't even be able to protect your fire seed. Jian was very clear about the Lu tribe's current situation. He knew who the people around him were. He wasn't just trying to scare the Lu tribe. If things continued like this, the Lu tribe might not even be able to protect their fire seed. With the Lu tribe's character, it would be a miracle if they could protect their fire seed. Right now, the Thousand Masks tribe had taken in many people from small to medium-sized tribes. They were currently building a city and lacked food. If it weren't for the fact that the Lu tribe was good at rearing beasts and had many beasts in their animal pens, the Thousand Masks tribe wouldn't have accepted such a weak tribe. Jian laughed coldly in his heart. "Don't say that I didn't warn you. If this continues, you'll be at a disadvantage. Also, who knows when our chief will change his mind." Jian finished the green fruit in his hand in a few bites and casually threw the core on the ground. He stood up and prepared to leave. Just as Bai Xing and the others were about to say something, Jian aura suddenly changed. Under his animal hide clothes, there seemed to be something moving in the muscles on his back. The meridians extended from his neck all the way to his face. With a cracking sound, white bones appeared on Jian face. His entire face was changing. His eyes widened and his pupils dilated. His brow bones protruded and his eyebrows were pressed down. In the blink of an eye, Jian had already turned around. He stomped on the ground and crushed the core of the fruit he just threw. A large footprint was instantly left on the relatively flat ground. Dust was splashed into the air, almost drowning people like a fog. In the midst of the dust, Jian usually smiling face was no longer smiling. The white bones that protruded from his face covered his entire face. He looked extremely ferocious. You couldn't judge a Thousand Masks tribe member based on their temperament. You couldn't judge them based on their usual appearance. You had to judge them based on their appearance when they used their totemic power. That was why Jian temperament was just like the specialized bones that covered his entire face. He looked like a ferocious beast that was about to go berserk. His aura was like a dark cloud that weighed heavily on the hearts of the Lu tribesmen. Seeing Jian like this, Bai Xing was furious. "You want to fight? Fine, let's fight." Just as he was about to make a move, he was held back by the elders beside him. Jian glanced disdainfully at Bai Xing, whose face was red with anger. He had already told the chief that they couldn't speak nicely to the Lu tribesmen. The more they tried to be nice, the more they would drag things out until the crisis was over. Jian Fa didn't want that to happen. If he showed them a strong stance, they would naturally back down. Look, wasn't this the case now? A bunch of cowards. We need time to think, an elder said with difficulty. Wasn't the time I gave you last time enough? How long do you want to think? Jian Fa's cold voice rang out in the room. His tone was filled with impatience. Seeing that the Lu tribesmen were about to say something, Jian Fa waved his hand as if he was swatting flies. I'll give you 3 more days to think. After 3 days, I'll leave with my people. In other words, if the Lu tribesmen agreed to move after 3 days, Jian Fa would bring them to the Thousand Masks tribe's territory. If they didn't agree, he would wash his hands of this matter. They wouldn't care if the outsiders robbed or killed the Lu tribesmen. Since they didn't want to come to their territory, they wouldn't care about their business either. Jian Fa didn't allow the Lu tribesmen to say anything. In the end, Jian Fa brought the 500,000 Masks warriors to the Lu tribesmen's living quarters. They were treated to good food and drinks. Yan Jiao watched from the beginning to the end. He didn't say anything. He remained silent with a dark expression on his face. He didn't want to see the elders' attitude, but he knew that they were worried. He didn't know what to say. Should he join the Yanjiao instead of the Thousand Masks tribe? But the Yanjiao people didn't show up. He didn't even know what the Yanjiao people were thinking. 3 days, to the Lu tribesmen, was too short a time. The entire tribe was filled with an anxious atmosphere. This atmosphere was getting stronger by the second. The Lu tribesmen gathered together and discussed for 3 days without sleep. They argued for 3 days until their throats were hoarse. They still hadn't come to a conclusion. Yan Jiao had expected this, but there was nothing he could do. Although he was the leader of the tribe, there were still many people above him. His suggestion couldn't get the others to agree. Even Bai Xing, who had a good relationship with him, was pessimistic. As the sky gradually brightened, everyone became more and more agitated. It didn't matter if it was the people in the room or the other Lu tribesmen. The deadline was approaching. They had to give Jian Fa an answer. Early in the morning, Jian Fa's eyelids twitched. He had a feeling that something was about to happen. It was a bad feeling. After some thought, Jian Fa woke up all his subordinates. He was going to force the Lu tribesmen to make a decision. What if the Lu tribesmen don't agree? Are we really going to leave just like that? Asked a Thousand Masks tribesman. Jian Fa was distracted and didn't answer immediately. Instead, someone beside Jian Fa said, "Of course we can't just leave like that. No matter what, we have to bring some things back. Since the Lu tribe can't protect their own things, it's better to give them to us than to let the outsiders take them all. Wait for an opportunity to take them? Good idea. Everyone, remember to take as much as you can. Don't let the outsiders take everything." Jian Fa didn't say anything as he listened to the discussion. He had the same thought in his mind. Sooner or later, the Lu tribe would be robbed by those outsiders who gathered here. Why should they leave empty-handed? The atmosphere at the Lu chief's place became even more tense because of Jian Fa's arrival. What's the result? I don't want to wait here forever, Jian Fa urged impatiently as he sat down on a thick animal hide mat that his subordinates had brought over. It's not the deadline yet," whispered an old man. Strictly speaking, the 3-day deadline would only end at noon. I don't care. Give me the result now. Jian Fa didn't want to give these people any more chances to delay. He didn't want to waste any more time. Jian Fa's eyelids twitched even harder. He raised his hand and pressed it against his eyelids. He made up his mind to solve this problem as soon as possible. The current chief of the Lu tribe, Bai Xing, was so angry that he clenched his fists. If it weren't for the elders beside him holding him down, he would have exploded already. Even as a chief, he had to endure this. It was so humiliating. He wanted nothing more than to die in battle like the previous chief. Bai Xing held his breath and didn't say anything. He looked at the shaman. The shaman sighed helplessly and said to Dian Fa, "Now isn't the best time to merge the fire seed." Dian Fa frowned. This was an excuse, but it was also the truth. If the Lu tribe failed to merge their fire seed here, they would be crippled. What would they do with a crippled tribe? "We can go over first. We can merge after we get there. We must merge," Dian Fa emphasized. The shaman looked at Bai Xing after hearing this. This was the only thing they could do. Under the urging of the elders, Bai Xing took a deep breath and suppressed his anger. He was about to say something when his expression suddenly changed. The others in the room also had the same reaction. Yan Jiao stood up and rushed out. The Lu tribesmen might be slow when it came to other things, but they could sense the movements of their animals very quickly. As for the animals that were stolen, they were lured away on their own accord. When they left, they didn't make any movements at all. That was why the guards didn't sense them. At this moment, the Thousand Masks people didn't see much movement at the beast pens. However, it was a different story for the Lu tribesmen. "What's going on? Are those outsiders here again?" Yan Jiao asked. I don't know." The person who was asked was still in a daze. "What are you looking at? Go to the beast pens and see what's going on." Yan Jiao roared. He was so angry that the veins on his forehead almost popped out. What time was it now? How could they still be in a daze? As he spoke, Yan Jiao was about to rush towards the beast pens. It was safer for him to go there himself. These brats were probably under too much pressure. Their emotions were unstable. They might not be able to see anything. Just as he took 2 steps forward, Yan Jiao saw one of his team members rushing towards him with a big black bull on the leash. That bull was the one they used to pull their carts. It was different from the other animals. This bull was more alert to its surroundings. It had been through a lot and was more sensitive to danger. At this moment, the black bull was anxiously kicking the ground with its hooves. "Something's wrong." Yan Jiao frowned. Then he thought of something and his face lit up. Could it be that the Yanjiao people were here? But what if it wasn't the Yanjiao people, but the outsiders in the forest? The man who led the black bull here looked at Yanjiao. Sometimes he was happy, and sometimes he was sad. His face changed constantly. The black bull stomped its hooves and looked in a certain direction. Yan Jiao looked in that direction. The sun had just risen, but it was already bright enough to illuminate the ground. Everything could be seen clearly. Yan Jiao walked towards the outskirts of the tribe. The person leading the bull followed him. After staring at the forest for a while, he still didn't see anything. Yan Jiao turned to look at the bull. When he saw that the bull was looking up into the sky, he immediately looked up. There was the shadow of a bird high up in the sky. Soon, the bird's shadow grew bigger and bigger. It flew across the sky like a gust of wind. A figure fell from above. Dian Fa and the other Lu tribesmen were also walking over. Of course, they saw this scene too. Boom! It was as if a huge rock had fallen to the ground. The moment the figure touched the ground, a loud bang rang out. Cracks spread out like a spider web. The soil was forcefully peeled off from the ground and shattered in an instant. Countless clouds of dust rose into the air, as if a thick haze had suddenly appeared. The ground seemed to be shaking. Even the soles of their feet were numb. Dian Fa blocked the dust and squinted his eyes. There was too much dust and he couldn't see clearly who was there. He could only hear footsteps approaching. Tap, tap, tap. As the footsteps got closer, the dust was blown away. When he saw who it was, Jian Fei's expression turned even colder. He gritted his teeth and said, Yanjiao Shao Xian. Every word seemed to weigh 1,000 pounds. After he finished speaking, Jian Fei turned his head to look at Bai Xing and the other Lu tribesmen. His gaze was as sharp as a knife as he squeezed out a sentence from between his teeth. He gritted his teeth and said, You really found Yanjiao people. The higher-ups of the Lu tribe kept their discussions a secret. Jian Fei only heard that the Lu tribesmen might ask the Yanjiao people for help. He didn't think that these cowards would actually invite the Yanjiao people over. If the Yanjiao Shao Xian was here, then the rest of the Yanjiao people would be here soon too. These Yanjiao people were so far away. Instead of building their own city, they came here to ruin the Thousand Masks tribe's plans. Jian Fei's face twitched. He looked at the huge crater where Shao Xian landed and the cracks that extended outwards. Then, he looked at Shao Xian, who was walking over as if nothing had happened. Even if he didn't want to, he had to admit that trying to compete with the Yanjiao people in terms of physical fitness was just asking for trouble. He dared to go against the Lu tribesmen, but he didn't dare to offend the Yanjiao people. Especially when the person in front of him was the Yanjiao Grand Elder Shao Xian, the person he didn't want to offend. No wonder his eyelids kept twitching since early morning. He had a feeling that something bad was going to happen. Jian Fei cursed the Lu ancestors in his heart. Aha! When Yan Jiao saw Shao Xian, he felt as if the haze in his heart had finally dissipated. Seeing Shao Xian here meant that the Yanjiao people really wanted to help them. Shao Xian, you're finally here. Yan Jiao's smile was a little stiff under Jian Fei and the other Thousand Masks people's sharp gazes, but his eyes were filled with excitement. He looked behind Shao Xian and asked, You're the only one here? The others are still behind us. I'm here with another person, Shao Xian said. Huh? Where's the other person? As soon as Yan Jiao finished speaking, he heard a scream from the forest. Not long after, he heard the sound of something being dragged through the bushes. A cloaked person was holding a stranger by the neck and dragging him over. No matter how the stranger struggled, hit him, or even scratched him with his fingernails, the cloaked person's grip didn't loosen at all. The cloaked person's other hand was dripping with blood. However, the stranger didn't have any visible injuries, so it was obvious that the blood was from someone else. Of course, this wasn't the main point. The Lu and Thousand Masks tribesmen all stared at the sword in the cloaked person's chest. The sword had pierced through the cloaked person's body, but there wasn't a single drop of blood. As the wind blew, the linen cloak at the man's chest stuck to his body, allowing others to see clearly that the sword had really pierced through the man. However, there wasn't a single drop of blood on the cloaked person's body. He was even able to walk over, as if he wasn't affected at all. Did you get hit? Shao Xian asked. I'm fine. An emotionless voice sounded. Yan Jiao and the others were dumbfounded. How could he be fine after being pierced through? Just as they were thinking about this, they saw the cloaked man use his bloody hand to grab the hilt of the sword in his chest and pull it out. After pulling it out, he held the sword in his hand and continued to drag the person as if nothing had happened. Yan Jiao and the others were speechless. The Thousand Masks tribesmen were speechless. Even the person who was being held by the neck was stunned. He forgot to struggle. The surroundings were deathly silent, and even the air seemed to be filled with an icy chill. Everyone who saw this scene subconsciously shrank their necks. Jian Fei's eyelids weren't the only thing that was twitching. His eyes were twitching non-stop. What kind of monster was this? You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.